All right, and we are live on YouTube Vertical and X. And let's go Instagram. Welcome. Awesome. And we are live on YouTube, X, and Instagram. We're testing out today the vertical format. So stay tuned, stick along. I'm also streaming to the horizontal format. So we're going to be trying this as a dual experience, and we'll see we'll see how this turns out. So stick along for the ride. If you're hopping into the stream, we're actually doing our Saturday story and critique show, where we do live readings and story critiques of popular stories. Now, I'm about to go live on the horizontal platform, so you can just stick around for a second and we'll get right into the show. If you're just hopping in, I hope that you're having a good Saturday. I hope you're getting some good writing in. And bear with me. We're going to be playing around with some, I'm going to be testing out a couple things today. Since the vertical format is new, I usually stream to all the other horizontal formats on a YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, and LinkedIn. So the vertical experience will be a little interesting today. So I'm going to try to see how I can better balance out the experience for you and our horizontal audience. All right, excellent. And I will be starting shortly. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're having a good Saturday. I hope you're getting in some good writing today. Let's see. All right, and as you can see, I'm just orienting. Well, so what I'm doing is I'm orienting the horizontal live stream format on my end, so that way we can see. Essentially, the experience you'll be getting out of the vertical format is you'll get to hear the live readings, and I'll try to see if I can adjust the screen so you can see when I start getting into the readings themselves. This will be quite an experience for sure. All right, and thank you for hopping into that. All right, and then let's go live on horizontal. And once again, thanks for hopping onto the vertical streaming. This will be a different, it'll be an interesting experience. All right, and here we go. Welcome to Kaufman, the story and critique show. We are live. This is the first live story workshop where we go every single week. I accept and I read stories from the community, from other writers and authors. I do live readings and live critiques, so that way we can help give your story more value. Now, I'm actually trying something brand new today. I'm actually also streaming to our vertical formats. So we're streaming to YouTube vertical, we're streaming to Instagram and X as well to improve that viewing experience. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning process today. So definitely bear with me. We have quite a show. As always, my goal is how can I expand it to as many writers as possible? Awesome. So we have an exciting show set up for today. I have quite a number of stories queued up for y'all. All right. And then here we go. So let me just hop into the stream. And by the way, if you're watching on the replay, I got you covered. And if you're here on the vertical, you can always go over onto the YouTube horizontal channel at Kaufman's Corner. And when you're watching the replay, you can actually hop to the part of the video that brings you the most value. Whether you want to hear a story again, like something you missed, or whether you got your story reviewed and you're like, hey, I need to listen to that feedback because it was so valuable. All right, beautiful. And we got that. And let me just hop into the comments. It looks like Vaughn, welcome to the stream. Atomic, I see that you hopped over on the vertical format. That was weird, right? When the live stream started, my YouTube crashed and Instagram opened. Interesting. So you're like, you're going to come watch it on Instagram. Well, we're trying something new today. Awesome. Marta, welcome back from your travels. Fellow Hufflepuff over here. Eli, what's up? It's okay, Marta. We'll have to get popcorn on the next stream. Remy, great to see you back. Welcome back to the stream. Lewis, I got your story set up for today. And John, hello, 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 hello. And we have all the regulars. So I'm super excited to hop into it. And once again, if you're just hopping into the stream, I'm actually streaming to both the horizontal and the vertical format. So we're streaming to seven different sources. If you're here in the vertical format, thank you for joining today. I've been trying to figure out how can I include Instagram and X in a more vertical live stream experience, so that way you guys can be involved in the experience as well. Stephanie, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Awesome. So for our vertical viewers, if you're just hopping in, this is a new format that I'm trying for the vertical format. Most of the graphics I have are set up for the horizontal, the normal one. What I'm going to do is I'll adjust the camera on this end so you can be included in part of the experience. All right, and our most exciting thing. So as some of you probably saw from last week, we did a brand new segment. We did our quote of the day. I was like, I think this deserves some sound effects. Our quote of the day. Woo! So we did a quote of the day game. So if you're saw last week's episode and you know what it is, essentially I'm doing a brand new game experience. Basically, I want you to drop as many comments throughout the stream as you can, whether that's writing based or things that are talking about different parts of these stories that we go through. At the end of the stream, I'm going to pick the most popular comment. I'm going to pick the comment that stands out the most to me. Last week it ended up being a joke. And it might be a clever comment. It might be something that is more focused on storytelling, like it's a really great piece of advice. I'm going to speak to some of the top comments, and then we will pick the comment and the quote of the day. The quotes are going to be added to a brand new, let me say it, a brand new community experience that I'm building for you. So that way we can work on our storytelling all day, every day. So that's coming soon. And vertical YouTube, if you're here as well, welcome. The quote of the day game just goes for you too. Hey, what's up? Annabelle in the stream. Looks like I got Annabelle. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for dropping by the stream, Annabelle. Happy to have you over here. All right, so we got you guys over here. No, so keep your comments coming. I'll touch back into the quote of the day game winner at the end. Polish popcorn, the best popcorn ever. You know what, Joe? It's a good call out. Hey, what's up, Zerby? Welcome to the stream. Welcome, welcome from Twitch. And we are doing good. Somebody needs to turn the radio back to a good channel. You're like, hopefully. I guess we'll find out. Marta, your joke. Why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. Wah, 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 wah. I've heard that one before too. That one's funny. John, I'm not surprised that you took this in the 69 format. Okay, so make sure that you keep dropping those comments and I will keep adding them to our comments of the day. But let's get into the live story reading experience. So the story and critique show. The way this works out, writers submit stories and I will read them live and then provide live critiques. If you want your story read aloud, in the horizontal, I have my email down below. If you're here on vertical, it's up above. Send a story excerpt to the email kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com. I will add it to the submission queue. I will add stories to my submissions as I receive them. I try to balance out new writer stories and experienced writers in terms of returning. So I try to do a mix of both. The genre, you can do any genre you want. We get a mix of fantasy, horror, romance, we get sci-fi, we get all the things in between. I got in scripts, we get short stories, we get story excerpts. It all works because storytelling doesn't change. At heart, storytelling stays the same. I believe every single story needs a character and a true character development. You're still doing world building. It just changes based off the genre that you're working in. All right, beautiful. So as I think about the submission process and I'm queuing up the story, let me call up my first writer, Owen. So Owen, I got your story on deck. We're going to be starting off with a horror, a thriller horror, The Corporate Graveyard. Woo! And we actually did an excerpt of the story a couple streams back. So this is going to be a fun reading experience. Okay, so as I'm queuing that up, let me pull up my guidelines. It was like, probably be helpful if I actually shared my screen. All right, so there we go. So as you can see, I got the story set up. And then on the top right, I have critique guidelines as well. So like I said, I already went over the submission process. Essentially, when the way that I format everything Comic Sans, and I make everything bigger so that way you can see the reading as I'm going about it. If you're here in the vertical stream, I'm going to adjust the camera so that way you can watch the reading as well. Now, in terms of the timer, every story gets 20 minutes. I do 10 minutes for reading and 10 minutes for critique. So I try to be fair and give every story the same amount of time. If I'm almost at the end, we'll see what we see. So we'll do our best here. And then let's see what else. We also got the time and highlighting. So if I'm highlighting your story, no worries, no cause for concern. It's just me keeping track of where I'm at in the story, the editing. So that way when I go back for the critique, I can give you good and great critique that's going to help you out and help you improve the story the most. And then I highly encourage you, highly encourage you. Drop a comment and join in on the critique. As you can see on my screen, and I'll switch it up over here for vertical. Let me change the vertical camera so you can see. There we go. Perfect. So we're going to go here. There we go. Perfect. So I got it so that way, vertical audience, you can enjoy it as well. I won't have access to comments. Oh, actually, I will. Sweet. Perfect. So beautiful. So I got you guys both set up here. But as you can see from the experience and from the screen, I try to, I give my critique guidelines in the right here. So that way I can, I know like what areas I'm looking for. If you see something that really stands out to you, and let's say something that really, like it's something you really like, or maybe it's something that you feel like could be improved upon, drop a comment. And remember, I will be looking at all comments for our quote of the day game. Beautiful. And let's see. Fresh Lettuce, welcome to the stream. I like your hat. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? Keeping it classy, my friend. We're keeping it classy. Okay. So, here we go. And what I will do is I'm going to try that. Y'all can see me here in the horizontal format. On the vertical, you just get to see the screen itself so you can read the story. Okay. And I am all set. So, Owen, I got your story all ready. All right, so I got 20 minutes on the clock. We got The Corporate Gravestone by Owen Pratt. Now we're right in the middle of the story. We did we're starting off right in a horror setting. So let's see what we got for today. Chapter 7, The Burning of the Books. The night Jason was ordered to kill Judy was one he would never forget. The office was eerily quiet, as most employees had already left for the day. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, hands coated in a film of sweat, as he made his way to the area where Judy often stayed late to finish her work. The fluorescent lights cast a cold, harsh glow over the rows of empty desks, and the silence was almost suffocating. Jason felt a deep sense of dread as he approached Judy's desk. He had known Judy for a few months, and despite her complicity in the company's activities, she had always treated him with a certain level of kindness. She was efficient, knowledgeable, and had been one of the few people he felt he could turn to when he first started at Innovate X Solutions. But now, standing just a few feet away from her, all he could feel was an overwhelming sense of guilt and horror. Judy looked up from her computer, surprised to see him. Jason, what are you doing here so late? She asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of concern. Jason struggled to find his voice. I need to talk to you, he managed to say, his voice trembling. He tried to keep his hands from shaking, but the terror he felt was almost paralyzing. Judy's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing that something was off. Is everything all right? She asked, standing up and taking a step towards him. Jason knew he had to act quickly. He had been given a knife, a cold steel blade that now felt like a burning weight in his pocket. His mind raced, thinking of any possible way out, any excuse he could make to avoid what had been ordered to do. But deep down, he knew there was no escape. The company was watching, and any sign of hesitation could be fatal for both of them. Taking a deep breath, Jason reached into his pocket and wrapped his fingers around the handle of the knife. I'm sorry, Judy, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Before she could react, he lunged forward, the knife slicing through the air with a swift, brutal motion. Judy's eyes widened in shock and pain as the blade plunged into her abdomen. She let out a strangled gasp, her hands instinctively reaching for the wound as she stumbled backward. What Jason assumed to be a seepage of blood came bursting out, covering anyone and everything. Jason tried wiping the blood away, but it already stained his clothes. But more importantly, stained him and his mind for good. A hot surge of pain shot through her body, radiating from the wound like a searing flame. With a guttural gasp, she stumbled backward, her hands instinctively clenching the gaping wound as blood, thick and warm, oozed between her fingers in a sickening cascade. Her vision blurred with tears as the metallic tang of blood filled her nostrils, mingling with the acrid scent of fear. Each heartbeat throbbed against the wound, sending shockwaves of agony through her trembling frame. Desperation clawed at her mind as she fought to stay upright. But with each passing moment, her strength ebbed away like sand slipping through her fingers. Jason felt like he was moving through a nightmare. Every second stretched into an eternity. Back with the sound of the office clock in the background, slowly going tick, tick, tick. As he watched, Judy's body slowly collapse to the floor, her life slipping away with each passing moment. Blood pooled around her, staining the pristine office carpet a deep crimson. Her breaths came in ragged, desperate gasps, and her eyes locked onto his, filled with a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. Jason, why? She managed to choke out, her voice weak and fading, blood curdling out her mouth simultaneously. Jason fell to his knees beside her, tears streaming down his face. I had no choice, he cried, his voice breaking. They would have killed me. I'm so sorry, Judy. I never wanted this. Judy's body lay sprawled on the floor, her limbs splayed in unnatural angles. A crimson pool spread beneath her, staining the pristine floorboards. Her once vibrant eyes, now vacant and hollow, stared blankly at the ceiling. Strands of hair clung to her clammy forehead, a stark contrast to the pallor of her skin. The room seemed to hold its breath, heavy with the weight of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. From Jason's perspective, devoid of the olfactory senses, the scene before him was devoid of scent. Despite the absence of any discernible odor, the sight of Judy's lifeless body on the floor evoked a sense of dread that lingered heavily in the air. The metallic tang of blood mingled with the stale atmosphere, though Jason remained oblivious to its presence. The stillness of the room seemed to amplify the silence, punctuated only by the sound of his own racing heartbeat. Though his senses failed to register the scent of death that permeated the room, the weight of the moment hung heavily upon him, an invisible shroud suffocating him with guilt and remorse. Judy's body convulsed as she fought to stay alive, but the damage was too severe. Within moments, her movement ceased, and her eyes glazed over as the light left them. Jason knelt there, his hands covered in her blood, consumed by a wave of overwhelming guilt and sorrow. He had crossed a line from which there was no return, and the weight of his actions threatened to crush him. As the reality of what he had done set in, Jason knew he had to act quickly. The company would be checking on him, ensuring that he had carried out their orders. He stood up, his legs trembling, and looked around the office, trying to figure out his next move. He needed to make it look like Judy had been a casualty of a random act of violence, something that wouldn't arouse suspicion. He hurriedly wiped the knife clean and placed it in Judy's hand, arranging her body to make it appear as though she had been attacked by an unknown assailant. He ransacked her desk, scattering papers and knocking over her belongings to create the illusion of a struggle. His heart pounded in his chest as he worked, the fear of being discovered pushing him to move faster. Yet within it felt right, something inside of him, enjoying every second of his own worst nightmare. Once he was satisfied with that scene, Once he was satisfied that the scene looked convincing, Jason backed away, his eyes never leaving Judy's lifeless form. He knew he had to leave before anyone saw him, but his legs felt like lead, and every step was a monumental effort. As he turned towards the exit, he heard a faint noise, a soft footstep. Behind him, he froze, panic surging through his veins. Slowly, he turned around, expecting to see one of the company's off-the-book members watching him. But there was no one there. The office was still, empty. The silence now filled with an eerie, oppressive weight. Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He knew he had to get out of there, to put as much distance between himself and the scene of the crime as possible. With one last anguished glance at Judy's body, he slipped out of the office and into the dimly lit corridor. The walk to the elevator felt like an eternity. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every sound amplified by his heightened senses. He pressed the button for the elevator, his hand still trembling, and waited. The moment stretched on, each second feeling like a lifetime. When the doors finally opened, he stepped inside and pressed the button for the ground floor, his heart pounding in his chest. As the elevators descended, Jason's mind raced. He couldn't believe what he had done, but more worrying, it felt so right there was this post-event rush of joy and power running through his body. He felt like a god. The image of Judy's lifeless eyes haunted him, a stark reminder of the price he had paid to survive. He knew he couldn't go back to his old life. He was now a part of something dark and dangerous, and there was no escaping it. When the elevator doors opened, Jason quickly made his way through the lobby and out into the night. The cool air hit him like a slap in the face, bringing a momentary sense of clarity. He took a few deep breaths, trying to calm his heart. He knew he had to keep moving, to find a place where he could gather his thoughts. Whew. All right, and we are going to end that sprint there. Whew. We're going to end that reading sprint there. Wow, I was definitely there was parts of that first section where I was definitely like very, very put off for the right reasons. It was like, wow. So, Owen, you did a really, really good job. Let me pull this up. You did an incredible job the edits that we did and the recommendations we suggested from a couple weeks ago and infusing it into the script. I felt the first half of it, I was almost like, part of me was like reeling, like when in that moment when you're watching a horror story and it's like, it's so good, but it's so bad. And like, that's the feeling that you want to have. That is the absolute feeling. So you did a really good job of using the word choice once again to pull the reader into the story and to make it feel like I was right there with the character, with our protagonist, as he's literally killing Judy. Jason's killing Judy. You're like, oof, sorry, Judy. Didn't work out too well for you this time, my friend. Oof. But yeah, I would say hands down, one of the best things that worked was definitely so let me pull up. So you can see over here, what worked the best was the character development. Jason's character development was very spot on. The world building is done in such a way that you know the word choice that you want to use and you know the type of language that feels important to you. And it feels like I get this like gory, bloody feel throughout of it. And I know that it's working because I feel like I'm able to imagine myself with Jason and he like doesn't want to do it. Like clearly he doesn't want to kill her, but his life is literally being threatened by this company. So I would absolutely say great work on the previous edit. I didn't have as much recommendations in the beginning portion of it, simply because like from what we had suggested last time, like it worked out very, very well. So there were some things I absolutely liked. And I'm seeing in both the horizontal and the vertical formats that we're actually getting some really good feedback. We're getting some really, really great feedback. So we're getting some really great recommendations. Let's see, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop a couple of these recommendations on the screen. So we have some really great comments from Eli and Atomic. Eli, you mentioned a thing, the silence was almost suffocating. I would lose the almost and just have the silence was suffocating. Absolutely great comment. Atomic dropped a comment on our vertical stream. There's a lot going on here. I would say the most glaring thing to address is the shift of POV. Third person omniscient could be an unconventional choice, but make sure it's intentional. So we do end up switching a lot between first and third person. I would completely agree with that. I think there's times where it felt like it was working, but I started recognizing it more as I was getting farther into the story. I think the story itself is sound. I think what that next step really looks like is having an editor come in and really distinguishing, like, okay, this sentence is clearly a first person. This sentence is clearly a third person point of view. Essentially, you need a line edit. Like, that would really be the next step that I'd recommend. Yeah, and John, you're talking about a little overly descriptive. It's once again like there's definitely some word choice that I could have cut out of that story, but I think overall for this draft of the story, it works. I'm happy with this draft. Would I say this is ready for a final draft? Not quite. I think it definitely needs to be taken through the editing stage where an editor would basically shave off a lot of that extra word choice, the extra POV that doesn't make sense between the two. But I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah, and essentially what you do, Owen, you touch on more of the senses of smell. Not that you touch on more of the different senses, which is something that I really appreciated. Let's see, and it was definitely stronger than last time. I absolutely agree. Let's see, let me dig into it. I just filled up deep sense of dread. So I felt I was clear on Jason's journey and how Jason felt. I was very clear that Jason did not want to be there. He did not want to off Judy, but it felt like he had to. The moment of killing her, I almost I almost, she asked, standing up and taking a step towards him. Yeah, no, I mean, the action is good. You're touching what happens between them is fine. Jason knew he had to act quickly. He had been given a knife, a cold steel blade that now felt like a burning weight in his pocket. His mind raced. Any possible way out? Yeah, and I mean, I think the death scene is good this time. I don't have too many recommendations outside of just some minor edits. There was a couple, and I think this is the thing to take away, Owen. So, like, overall, really great work on this version. Um, my recommendations are purely technical in this iteration of it because I feel like the world feels sound. I don't have any recommendations for the developmental aspect because it feels like a sound story. Jason feels clear. Does Judy feel like a believable character? I think it's kind of besides the point at this point of the story because essentially she's just there to get killed off. But I think her shock at getting killed is what's important. And I think that plays across very well. Sorry, with the good old gasp. A hot surge of pain shot through her body, radiating from the wound like a searing flame. With a guttural gasp, she stumbled backward, her hands instinctively clenching the gaping wound as blood, thick and warm, oozed between her fingers in a sickening cascade. I'm asking myself, with a guttural gasp, she stumbled backward, her hands instinctively clenching the gaping wound as blood, thick and warm, oozed between her fingers in a sickening cascade. I'm like, I feel like I could cut a couple words there, but it's like things like that where I would just tune it down just a little bit. Her vision blurred with tears as the metallic tang of blood filled her nostrils. And I know in one of the comments, someone was mentioning the metallic tang. The question I asked myself is, does blood have a metallic tang? Her vision blurred with tears as the metallic tang of blood filled her nostrils. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, the metallic tang of blood. Tang. I don't. Something about tang specifically bugs me. That specific word. I feel like there's a better word choice for tang, but that would fit this better. But that could just be a personal thing. But her death scene was good. I like the tick tick tick. I like that you have the main environment and that he's basically standing over her body and now he's just in this empty room where you have the clocks basically ticking in the background and he's going to be killed. Okay, cool. Yeah, Tom made a good point here. So yes, blood tastes metallic due to the high iron content. It's actually really good to know. Awesome. I agree, Eli. It looks like Eli had another good call out here. Similarly, the stillness of the room seemed to amplify. I would lose the word seemed. My thinking is you're using figurative language, so just commit. The stillness of the room seemed to amplify. Yeah, completely agree. So with a lot of those extra, when we think of extra adjectives and descriptions, there are times where we can do that, where they're like, this thing happened and it felt like it was really big. But sometimes it just adds additional like noise and words that's just unnecessary. In a scene like this, you want to stick as close to the action as possible, especially during her death scene, because you want the reader to be focused on specifically what's happening. And when you add things like what Eli's saying, the stillness of the room seemed to amplify. Is the stillness of the room seeming to amplify, or is the stillness of the room amplified? Like, then you're making a more intentional choice about it, and it just feels stronger and more engaging to the reading experience. Let's see, and then what? Yeah, and even as I get a little further into it, yeah, because I highlighted that metallic tang section as well. The metallic tang of blood mingled with the stale atmosphere. Though Jason remained oblivious to its presence, it just needs to be reworded. Or it just needs to be rephrased because it feels like an incomplete sentence. And even like the other things that I touched upon was like, yet within it felt right, something inside of him enjoying every second of his own worst nightmare. Fragment sentence. So it just needs to be edited. So once again, Owen, I think you're at the point, at least with this section of the story, where I love it. Clearly the audience loved it as well. I'm getting in both a horizontal and the vertical streams that a lot of appreciation for it. And I think it's just at that point where it needs to be edited down in a word choice, and you need to give it to an editor or a proofreader or somebody who's going to take it through and then basically cut out all the extra and unnecessary wordage. So yeah, but that's all that I got for you today. And once again, we have to give like a huge round of applause. Owen submitted the story a couple weeks ago. Anytime somebody takes a story, they take the feedback that myself and the community gives to them, and they bring it back improved, is absolutely incredible. That is so incredible because that's part of the writing experience, right? And that goes to show how I'm improving it step by step by step. And I think that's awesome. So Owen, thank you, and really, really great work when you check this out. Awesome. So that was very, very good. It was a nice horror. We're starting off with like the horror and thriller vibe today. I'm like, all right. And we got quite the queue and the selection of stories today. So let me hop into the comments. This is definitely a learning experience for me to be focused on two chat sections at the same time. Definitely a learning experience, but very, very fun. And I'm making sure to highlight comments that I'm liking for our quote of the day game. Character. That's actually a good call, Eli. Your comment on if Judy feels like a believable character, because Eli's mind jumps to the opening scene in Jaws. As you say, as long as she reacts in a believable way, we don't need much on Judy. And that's the truth. And this is like a good call out for supporting characters. Like, obviously, you do want to develop your supporting characters. But if your supporting character is going to say one line in one scene, like don't invest all that extra time unless that supporting character is going to come back and like become a force ghost or become like a background or do something to further the story, because I don't want you to waste your time on characters that you're not really investing storytelling time into. Absolutely. I think it's important also when you're creating a character, what is the intent of the character? Like, obviously the character is going to have its own journey, whether it's a protagonist or a supporting character, but why is this character in the story? And I think that's really important to think about. Yeah, and Eli and John, you guys are both making really good call outs. So this is something I forgot to add earlier. If you're submitting your story to the stream, I'm always of the mindset that all comments, all criticism is good criticism. I am of the belief that I believe that your stories can absolutely 100% go on to become bestsellers. You can go through the whole process and it can get there. My goal, and I know the goal of our community, is to give you as much feedback as possible so that way you can take it and you can make it as amazing as you want to. And the great thing is, if you're the writer, you don't have to listen to all the feedback. The great thing is you get to choose the feedback that feels right for you. Now, when we think about taking feedback from our stories, this is what I always recommend. You always want to take you always want to take feedback with through a lens, right? Because feedback sometimes is very subjective and opinionated. And we as the writers are the only ones who know our story the best. So sometimes people could give certain feedback and it just might not be the right thing for what our goals with the story are. But if I put my story out and I get 5 different types of feedback and it's very similar, that just gives me more of a clue that maybe that is something that I need to adjust. So it's definitely a learning process, but I'm glad Eli, John, you guys both brought that up. because I always remember that in writing groups and critique groups when I was going throughout college, that there's always this like fear of writers of like getting like bad feedback and like bad responses for their story, and then they would feel a way about it. And I never felt like that, because I'm like, if people, the way I'm like, if somebody is taking the time to give feedback, then that means they care. Even if the feedback isn't great, even if the feedback is like, this story sucks, I made them feel something. Now, of course, I want them to feel a certain way, but if I didn't get them to feel that way, then that's a learning part of on my own journey. But yeah, I'm always of the belief all feedback is great feedback. Of course, unless you're being rude. Once people start being people are rude or using language that doesn't align with your values, that's a whole different thing. But feedback that's communicated in a way that's clear and kind is always great feedback, regardless of what content it is. So, exactly. John, you bring up a really good point. Plus, if I only tell you what I feel is good about the story, then I am coddling you. Also, it is helpful for people to develop thick skins about feedback. You know, that's interesting. John, I think it's less thick skins. I think people just have to have clear expectations, right? If I receive feedback from somebody about my story and I am upset about it, it is an indirect result of me having certain expectations that my story should be perceived a certain way. As writers, we have to accept the fact that we create our story, we create the universe, the characters, the world, and all the things. But once we put it out to the world gets to decide how they like it. You have to let your readership decide how they want to consume it. If your readership wants to make fun of and meme one of the characters because they crack them up, and then that's one of the things that blows your story up, that's what your readership wants you to do. It's not your decision on how readers get to experience your story, but it is your decision on on your messaging and how you want to put the story out there. And I think that's something that's very important to keep in mind. Absolutely. All right, perfect. Yeah, and I think, Eli, you bring up a good point. It's really ego. Ego is what really gets us the most, my friends. It's always the ego. How do we remove ego from the equation? Whew. Okay, but with that being said, let me queue up our next story. So we got story number 2. Lewis, I got your story on deck. So we're going to be hopping from horror thriller to fantasy. Woo! Horror thriller to fantasy. All right. So Lewis, I'm super stoked to get into your story. As I'm queuing up your story. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, subscribe, follow, and subscribe. I go live every single day. I'm a crazy writing live streamer. Monday through Thursday is our Kaufman Writes casual writing group and a casual writing community. Fridays are story time, where I read through popular best-selling novels. Currently, we just did Game of Thrones. We've been doing Fourth Wing. Saturday, obviously, today's our critique show, every single Saturday. And then Sunday is our Create Right Now podcast, where I sit down with published authors, industry professionals, and working writers. And we really dig into what are things that work for them so you can bring it into your own storytelling and improve your craft. If you're following and or subscribing from whichever platform you're tuning in from, you'll be alerted when I go live. Beautiful. And it's like, I should throw that up. Perfect. Wonderful. So I feel pretty good about that. Let me pull up Lewis's story. All right, Lewis, I'm going to throw that in the banner below. All right, and let me reset my timer here. Perfect. So I got 20 minutes on the clock again. And then if you're over here on vertical, let's hop into the second reading. All right. And then we'll try it this way. So I'll try sticking with this format this time for the vertical, and then I'll switch to the reading, the screen experience on the back end of the critique. Okay. Oh, by the way, Vaughn, I had to say this. Happy Pride Month. Happy Pride Month. Thank you, my friend. Happy Pride Month. Absolutely love it. I'll probably do a post next week, or I might do an article about Pride, which I've been thinking about putting together. But definitely, if you're celebrating Pride Month, we're actually going to be touching on tomorrow's Creative Right Now podcast. We're going to be talking about developing characters with LGBT themes. So make sure you stay tuned for tomorrow, especially in honor of Pride Month. All right. Okay, perfect. So let me pull up. Awesome. So I got Gravestone out of the way, and then let me pull up Lewis, your story. Awesome. Here we go. Perfect. And if you're here on the vertical format, I am just hopping into story number 2, The Departing Royal Reefs by Louis J. Mansaw. All right, perfect. And I'm here. Hey, what's up, Glitch? And welcome to the stream, my man. We're actually just about to hop into our next story for the day. Right, and we get fantasy. I love mixing it up. I love doing fantasy and horror. All right, so good job. There's a writer bracket in town. Oh, interesting. I'm not. We're there. Glitchum, since we're probably from all around the world, that's awesome. I'm all for writer brackets. So whatever that is, that sounds hopefully like it's a great experience. I hope I get to travel to a lot of writer events. John, it's Gay Frog Month. Pride Frog forever. I love that. Oh, by the way, I should make sure I throw up the banner. The quote of the day game. So don't forget, keep those comments coming. Whether the comment's clever, a joke, or it's something that's super helpful, keep them coming. I'm going to be nominating one quote at the end of the day, or at the end of the stream, that's going to win our quote of the day game. And each, the winning quotes are going to get added to a leaderboard that I'm creating on my new community tool that is coming and in development. All right, wanted to make sure I keep shouting out our quote of the day game because I had a lot of fun with your quotes. Y'all, like, as a side note, the things you guys say half the time crack me up so much. And the comments and the commentary for the stories that I see come in, especially as it's improving over time, is absolutely incredible. So keep it coming, whether you're here on our horizontal format or you're watching through the vertical live stream. Okay, beautiful. Let me hop into it. All right, so excerpt of work in progress. This is a first draft, Departing Royal Reefs by Louis J. Mansaw. Chapter 1, Streets of the Shameful. The sands of memories passed, as Kwanzaa's bejeweled sandals slipped on the rough ground of the alleyway. Starched thoughts raced through her mind. The shame that will be brought upon my family, to my father, if I don't find my brother in time. This galvanized her, growing gaits and strides, hastening to the important task she couldn't leave to anyone, not to a loyal servant. not to a close friend. She had to do this to herself. Besides, she vaguely knew where her brother was at that very moment, so no one else could do this to her. Could do this but her. However, she had to find him before the upright royal guards did. They would be far less understanding, having heard that they would be searching that part of the city for the unfaithful and killing all those who strayed from the set path. If it wasn't for her brother, Kwanzaa wouldn't be racing through the artistically decorated streets of Kubwa. She rarely, if ever, went outside on foot anywhere, only down a few cramped streets, and she already had enough of it. Enough of the golden sand from the nearby beach being blown around by the day's strong coastal winds, hitting her wrapped up face, its grittiness getting in between the coarse dark brown robe that she borrowed, rubbing her soft skin raw. It had even gotten in her covered up, luxurious locks. Some might have sneaked in the peasant brown tight headdress that hid the precious blue kitamite gem set in the elegant golden headpiece that showed her station. Oh, by the merciful maker, this is awful, she thought, covering her nose with a hand. Kwanzaa couldn't choose what was worse. The hell-awful smell of the unwashed bodies that mixed with the salt sea air, merging with the sizzling, succulent, spicy scent wafting from an open cutout of a dark den, slowly roasting a long, huge fire eagle on a fat-dripping spit, one of its legs alone, longer than her whole arm. She couldn't stand how close everyone was to her in the packed streets near the old market. Normally, she never had any commoner this close to her. Being a woman set apart like a large ship that the waves of people would part for. But right then, she was a pebble being carried by the crowd, bumping into men and women and children, all going about their day in the city of Kubwa. But it was the heavy heat that was truly getting to Kwanzaa the most. Her creamy, light brown skin rarely got the sun. It was meant for the comfort of the shade, not underneath the burning yellow sun hanging over the city, the heat baking everyone it hit. I could be at home, thought Kwanzaa, barging past a busy bunch of buyers. I would love to be underneath the shade of a nice, cool canopy right now. Kwanzaa's bright blue-eyed gaze shifted through the masses, looking for the way that would lead to her beloved twin brother. It was hard to find the sign with the various vibrant colored coffee and contrasting pale brown line patterns covering the white limestone homes and shop walls of the city. After a few moments, she recognized the walkway by the light and dark diamond pattern on the wall. In particular, a white chalk outline of a shapely woman on a dark painted diamond. Kwanzaa darted into the side street and through the back lanes where she found men lying down or sitting on the floor with their back to the wall, their eyes with an unfocused gaze to them, almost like they were dead. She recognized the paralyzing effects of numb grapes. If her father's men found them like this, drinking the forbidden substance, these men would be gutted and slaughtered like forsaken swine. They knew the law. Kwanzaa looked from face to face, trying to see if she might find the familiar, handsome mirror of herself. Some of the men had an arm or leg missing, a sign that had been part of the past war with the inlanders, the very inlanders who would soon be coming to the Grand City. As she ventured further from the noise and bustle of the old market and into the veins of the wicked, she could sense unseen eyes clawing her body. The more she got closer to the place where no pure woman would want to be, the more heated and hungry the gazes became. A firm hand grabbed her wrist as she went past. Kwanzaa sharply turned to the owner of the hand. He was an ugly brute with a few yellow teeth, most of them missing, a weeping wart on his nose, and dark, ashy skin. He made an up-close view of a jungle camel's runny backside seem like an oasis. His beady eyes roamed her figure. Hey, beautiful. Why not stop and spend some time with me? Asked Wartnose into Kwanzaa's ear, while his hot, brutal breath smacked her nose like an Altoan pit fighter's mace. I got enough king's coin to make it worth your while. From his accent, he was far from the western end of the coastal empire. By his garments of a rich, dark red waistcoat that was open, unable to cover a big belly that hung over his matching baggy trousers, wearing wide, crimson sandals fitting his gnarly feet, he was probably of the merchant or trader class. "No, sorry, sadly I can't," she said back in an apologetic tone. "I am late for my master." She started to move on, but his grip got tighter. "Come on, this won't take long," he slurred with a salacious smile. "Promise." That's probably the only promise he would keep, thought Kwanzaa. "You're just perfect for what I need," he said, pulling her closer. Kwanzaa had never allowed anyone to manhandle her like this, not any man besides one, for at her birth it was set in stone, no man shall touch the firstborn daughter of the king, other than the king and those men of his royal household. Even her father and twin brother were cautious not to roughly grab her in any way, for good reason. "Come on now," the fool whispered. "Let's have some fun." "No, let's not. Please let go of me," Kwanzaa said persistently, failing to wriggle out of the terrible traitor's grasp. "Oh no, we're just getting started," he said, starting to pull on her head covering with one hand and roaming her body in areas where no man but one should touch with the other. "How dare this man touch me in this way, and without my permission," thought Kwanzaa. So with the fury and swiftness of a mega snake, she acted. Kwanzaa grabbed the hand that was at the back of her head and swung it up and over to the front of her. Then, holding just his pinky finger, she twisted it backwards. The result was instant. The big man fell to his knees on the ground, with his back to her, arm twisted upwards, with Kwanzaa pulling his little finger in an odd and painful way. So much so that Wart Nose's whole world was seemingly surrounding it. "Now, when a woman says no," she said, twisting harder with every syllable, "it means no." With that, she kicked the man hard, right in the back of the groin, toppling the wart-nosed merchant, making him fly headfirst into the path, whimpering in pain. He rolled around, grinding the grovelly ground, one hand holding his head, the other between his legs. Kwanzaa viciously spat at him, enraged by the audacity of the man. Then, with her bejeweled sandal, Kwanzaa savagely kicked him in his big gut for good measure. After that, she continued on her way, without any more attempts to entice her. When she finally found the entrance to the place, covered in a pattern of small rings within big ones, leaning against the doorframe was a beautiful, mature woman. Her dark brown skin hid her age, but the streaks of gray in her unwrapped black locks showed it. But this made her, oh, so stunning. Her full, ample cleavage was barely covered in her close-fitting, forest green, shimmering silken gown. When the madam of the establishment saw Kwanzaa from a distance, a smile formed on her full lips. Covered in a servant's robe, hair, and face wrapped, Kwanzaa could imagine what she looked like to this merchant of skullduggery. A poor servant girl wanting to earn a little more coin on the side, or just let go by her master. So, in desperation, she came here to find some work. "Oh, will she be disappointed?" thought Kwanzaa as she approached, head bowed. Well, what do we have here?" said the madam, crossing her arms over her chest. "Looking for some work, are you?" Kwanzaa was right about what the lady would assume about her, but when Kwanzaa raised her head, meeting the woman's dark brown eyes, the madam stepped back and flinched. People often reacted like this to Kwanzaa when they saw her for the first time, or they unexpectedly looked at her directly, seeing what was framed with her long dark lashes, set in her smooth, honey brown face. Her stunning, foreign blue eyes, the famous crystal sky blue Altonian eyes of Princess Kwanzaa Wimbi, the firstborn of King Hakimu Wimbi, ruler of the Pawnee Empire. "Where's my brother?" hissed Kwanzaa. Perfect. And end reading. Wow, that was a really tough altercation between Kwanzaa and like that warty who's that warty, like the Wardy lecherous merchant guy. I was like, wow, that was really well done. I enjoyed that section. I could definitely feel like her reluctance and her just like trying to get away from him. And I felt like we were pretty easily able to picture the interaction and the exchange between Wartnose, we'll just call him Wardy. The interaction between Wardy and Kwanzaa. You could definitely tell that Kwanzaa kind of has this like, maybe this like naive, right now she comes across as having this like naive sense about her that maybe she's like, because she's royalty, maybe this could be a coming of age for her if she's not very familiar on social politics outside of her castle, or it could be something entirely different. But it seems like she was very surprised and taken aback by the fact that that Wartnose would try to take advantage of her. I think right now, I'm not too clear on the world itself quite yet, but this could just be because we're in the middle of an excerpt. I know it's a fantasy. I think what works well for this piece, I would say the character development was awesome. I like Kwanzaa's character development. I think the world building is the biggest opportunity right now because I'm not too clear on what the world is and what type of fantasy world I'm in. I know we got a little bit, and once again, we're also doing an excerpt. So we could have missed if the whole entire previous chapter was about world building. So that's always what we have to put out with the excerpts. But we know we're learning most about the world through Kwanzaa's character development. And I do like that. I'm actually not opposed to that through her and her royal family and the royal guards. And like, that's totally fine. I think what I would want to know, I would want to know a little bit more about what makes like this world specific, what makes this world unique. What about what's happening in what is different in like this alley or these streets that I wouldn't be getting or I wouldn't see in any other type of fantasy format. The overall vibe, it kind of gives me maybe like this kind of like Arabian-ish type of vibe. But that could just be a me thing. And I think the naming and the terminology was probably a factor in that. And like, even as we think about all of the names of the characters, right? The main characters, so her name is Princess Kwanzaa Wimby, the firstborn of King Hakima Wimby, ruler of the Pwani Empire. The roots of that make me think Native American. That definitely make me think Native American. Because I'm thinking of some of those original tribes. Yeah. Yeah, so I think like because as I'm thinking of the Pawnee Empire, I'm thinking of different like different like Indian tribe names. So that's kind of what it gives me. I'm kind of getting this cross between like type of like Indian culture, but then I'm kind of getting a little bit of like an Arabian culture. But that's just me, and that could just be a me thing. Let's see. Yep. So this is the first chapter. This is chapter 1. Yep. Lewis, thanks for calling this out. So yes, this is chapter 1. I think the only thing we don't know is whether or not there was a prologue. That's why, because sometimes fantasy stories tend to do prologues. It's Swahili, West African. Perfect. Awesome. So I was picking up a little bit about that. Let's see. I was picking up what was that? I said Indian and Arabian, but it's South African. And because I have such little knowledge of what Swahili or what West African culture is like, that could just be a me thing, and that could just be my lack of awareness. All right, so let's dig into it. From Quan. So this was interesting, and I actually want to bring this up as a point because this is what stood out for me. When I think of Kwanzaa, I'm Jewish, so I think of Kwanzaa as the holiday. That makes me think that Kwanzaa is a Jewish holiday, and that's what comes to me. So like I don't get African at all from Kwanzaa. I get Jewish heritage, which then makes me think of European heritage personally. But is Kwanzaa, is that like an African like terminology? Swahili are from East Africa. Yep. And that I do know. So I know Swahili is African, but Kwanzaa specifically, that I'm not sure about. Gotcha. So Lewis, you're saying Swahili was West African, and then Eli, you were asking if the Swahili are from East Africa. And once again, so out of my purview because I'm just not too familiar in geography. Not at all. It is. Kwanzaa is an African holiday. Wow, I did not even know that. Kwanzaa. Is an annual celebration of African American culture, commemorating in a communal feast called Karamu. Wow, awesome. Well, then, perfect. Then clearly that's out of my purview, and I just wasn't familiar with that. Thanks for sharing that with me, Doreen. That's actually really good to know. So clearly, with that being said, when we use characters who are based off of a holiday, or Kwanzaa means first. Okay, that's actually really cool, right? And clearly, for like a reader like me, of just like I wouldn't know that. I think when we're writing stories, we think about who is our readership and who's our audience, right? So if we're writing for a readership who is going to be very aware of that and who will know that type of terminology and will know of the more African culture, then that would be perfect. But just for me specifically, I just wasn't aware of that. But that's actually really cool to know. And anytime we name characters after a holiday or any type of celebration, we always want to think of is that what we want the reader to think of? And clearly, Lewis, you've thought about it since you know Kwanzaa means first, and that was the development that you've gone towards it. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. She's the firstborn of the king. Yeah, so I definitely got that. Definitely picked up on that. Atomic threw up a good comment here in our vertical stream. Atomic, you're saying sizzling, succulent, spicy scent. Tasty alliteration. Absolutely agreed. I think, Lewis, you had some really good word choice in here, which I absolutely appreciated. So let me dig into this a little bit. So it wasn't for brother Kwanzaa couldn't be racing. Yeah, so basically she had sneaked out. So basically it sounds like she snuck out with help of her brother. So she's kind of like pulling off like the commoner vibe right now. I think Lewis, I would say suck in the rough ground, shame. I think it's clear. So she's trying to find her brother. Okay, so she's trying to find her brother. So I think Lewis, I think what I'm not clear about right now is this like her first like outing outside of the royal walls? Because the way that she responds to Wartnose feels like this is like a first like interaction of like, oh, like people have never treated me like this. So I think that's something to think about. Is this her first outing? Because since he's like noted as a local, as some type of merchant, it seems like there's probably a culture of chauvinistic assholes out there in this world who are probably like that. And then secondly, if she snuck out of the royal palace, how did she get out? I'm curious of how did she sneak out? If she's a royal princess, wouldn't she like have like a guard Or wouldn't there be like a whole like entourage of like people who like want to protect her? And truthfully, this could be something that you touch on in the next chapter, but this is just something that comes to mind. If that's something you're going to touch on like later, then great job, great work, because those are the questions that come to mind as both a reader and an editor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally that. I think that's why I was thinking Princess Jasmine. I think that's probably why I was thinking of Arabian. I think I want to know why or how she snuck out. Like, did she like crawl through like the crack in the wall? And and I think what I also want to know is this the first time she's sneaking out? That's what I really want to know. Because based off the way she responds to everyone, it feels like this is the first time she's ever snuck out. And I think what's interesting is her search for the brother is actually a really good, it's setting up really good stakes of, oh, she has to find her brother. Lewis, I think something that I would add, this sense is inspired by Princess Jasmine. Perfect. So that's why I picked up on Arabian, because I was totally thinking Princess Jasmine. Excellent. Then what I would do, so Lewis, for an American audience who isn't going to be as familiar with African culture, what I would do is I would throw in a little more terminology in the beginning of the story to orient the audience and know that we're taking place in whatever this world is. I was just include a little more word choice or a little more African culture inspired word choice outside of Kwanzaa. Absolutely, just to add to it. I think that would be helpful. From a plot perspective, I get that she's searching for her brother. I think, and I get that there's some type of time clock, which is good. In the encounter between her and Wartnose, I think I almost want a little more additional like speed. What's not speed? I want like an additional couple of lines of like she needs to get away from Wartnose because her brother's in danger, or because she has to get to her brother, or whatever's inspiring it. I get that she's looking for her brother in the beginning. It kind of gets lost when she starts getting interrupted by Wartnose, but I understand why, because clearly he's being a chauvinist. So I think that would just be something to include in. So I would say a little more descriptive word choice for the world itself, more touching on the brother in the middle. My favorite part was the interaction between Wartnose and Kwanzaa. That I absolutely loved. I mean, obviously that's not a good thing, but the way you went about that was really interesting. And I think you gave Wartnose just enough description to make him be a non-likable supporting character, which was a great job. How will be explained later. Perfect. Wonderful. Which means, Lewis, that we are asking the right questions then. Wonderful. Yeah, so it sounds like Lewis is, if you're here on Vertical, it sounds like in some of the later chapters, Lewis explains how she like escaped and more of the backstory and what's going on. Then I think what I would prioritize, Lewis, is a little more world building. I think that's what I would prioritize then, is like thinking of like what are specific words that make it feel like that I'm in this world and I know exactly where I'm at. I think that would absolutely help this. Cover up luxurious lots. Oh, I wanted to say this. So, like, it had even gotten in her covered up luxurious locks. Some might have sneaked in the peasant brown tight headdress that hid the precious blue kitamite gem, sat in the elegant golden headpiece that showed her station. Well, the sentence itself is a little bit of a run-on. What I wanted to call out was that I really liked the type of description you're using for her. I get that she has very luxurious hair, so she's royalty. And she's wearing this like peasant tight headdress, right? I totally get like it's like a cloak. It feels like she's wearing this like brown cloak. It hid the precious blue kitamite gem set in the elegant golden headpiece. So she basically is wearing a crown, beautiful hair, crown, and it's covered by this by a headdress, which is very interesting. But I love the description of giving me that imagery of, okay, so she's royalty underneath this like peasant common attire. I really love that. And Lewis, another thing on a structural perspective, I don't actually know if italicizing these things are necessary. Here's the reason why. Right now, Kwanzaa is the only point of view character in the chapter, so it's assumed that everything she thinks is her thoughts. So italics, you want to use italics, and you want to use different fonts and different styles to highlight things when it could potentially be confusing. Since Kwanzaa is the only point of view character, I can get your reader will understand that this is what she's thinking. So she would be like, oh, by the merciful maker, this is because then what you could do is you can get rid of the thought. Oh, by the merciful maker, this is awful. Awful. By the merciful maker, this is awful. Kwanzaa covered her nose with her hand. So then I would do that, right? Because then you can get rid of word choice. And I would say, Lewis, I'm glad you saw that. I would say take that note and then go through the entire section, because then you can get rid of extra word choice and it'll pull your reader even more into it. Yeah, and I think that's the other main one. I like that she recognized the paralyzing effects of numb grapes. So, like, this is a perfect example, Lewis, is I want more of this type of thing. I have no clue what numb grapes are. As a reader, I have no clue what numb grapes are, but you give a little detail, you give a little description, and you're like, okay, numb grapes it's some type of maybe alcoholic forbidden substance. You say what this is, you give a little description, just enough where it is intriguing, and I know as a reader, okay, something that paralyzes them, and it's probably a type of alcohol. I want more instances of this type of idea where you're like referencing something, and then maybe give a little description very early on before the encounter with the with Wartnose, because these types of things add to the world building. I'm like, I can't think of another story where there's a numb grape thing that has a paralyzing effect. That's cool. Yeah, and then once we get to a Wartnose, like I was fine with the whole Wartnose bit. Like he was he was creepy. I was like, I tried to pull his I hope I pulled his voice out correctly. Hey, what's up, Alpha? Welcome to the stream. Welcome. Thanks for dropping by. I'm live on the vertical stream right now on YouTube. Let's see. Awesome. And Lewis, I definitely went way over time with you, but this is you definitely have the really good foundation for a story. So I wanted to make sure that I gave you a little extra right here, especially because we went off on a tangent on terminology in the beginning. So, but yeah, really good foundation. I want more. I really want to learn more about this Kwanzaa character now. Now that you kind of explained Kwanzaa to me a little bit, I'm like, okay, I'm down for that. I like that her name is first. I would almost think, Lewis, like, what if in the very beginning or somewhere you have some type of reference where somebody asks her what her name is, or maybe you do this later on in the story, but like, I want to actually learn that her name is, that means first early on. Not every reader is going to know that, and I think that's super cool. Yeah, but yeah, thanks so much for submitting, Lewis. That was wonderful. Oh, thank you. And by the way, if you're just hopping into the stream or you're watching this on the replay, we're just doing live story readings and critiques. So if you want your story read or you want a live critique of your story, make sure to send it. If you're here on the horizontal, ticker at the bottom. If you're here on vertical, ticker at the top. Send it to that email, Kaufman at the-creative-ghost.com, and I will add it to our submission queue. Woo! Oh, I'm loving it. We went from horror to fantasy. I'm like, all right, let's see what we got next. We're going to be on deck. We got another fantasy. Mary. I'm going to be doing a chapter from the Crystals, from Crystals by Mary Last. Mary, I think I might have seen, I think I saw you in the stream at one point. If you haven't seen some of our previous episodes, Mary has actually been developing the story for the past, I think, the past couple weeks, and we've actually gotten into seeing a couple earlier iterations of the prologue and the first chapter, and we've really seen it come to life. So I'm super eager to hop into this next section of the story. I'll be getting into your section, Mary, in just a second. Okay, so let me hop back into the comments and see what we got. All right, so we got some really good comments. Lewis, I can even tell from both the horizontal and vertical formats that there's definitely appreciation for your work. So I definitely want you to know you're doing a really good job. Absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of great comments in here. John, if you're still here, John, you crack me up with your comments. Yeah, Vaughn. So thanks for calling out. I know you said there's some major events. I know you mentioned it earlier. I try to keep everything on these streams on a pure writing focus. I need to add comment guidelines. It's on my to-do list. I need to add guidelines for comments. And I think as writers, we write all different sides of things. We'll write things from clearly fiction, nonfiction, or things around us. I'm fine with talking about certain events, but it really comes down to how's it going to pertain to writing. And I think there's absolutely an avenue, right? If somebody, let's say somebody's into journalism, or somebody is into taking a certain event and then making it into based off this, there's an absolute avenue for that, and that is writing. But we always have to ask ourselves, how do we write it, format it, and package it in a way to either start a conversation or achieve whatever goal we want to as writers. So very good call out. Very, very good. And I just have to say, I appreciate all y'all. We haven't, so far, I've been streaming consistently over 160 days. We're probably about to hit 170 soon. I've streamed nearly 170 consecutive and consistent days back to back. Haven't had any real issues with comments and chat. Previously, as the channel grows, as the streams grow, like it's a matter of, it'll happen eventually because this is the internet. But I just want to say I really appreciate each and every one of you with your comments, your thoughts, and your mature approach to writing and commentary. So thank you. It means a lot to me. It really does. Perfect. And then let's see, we got into the Kwanzaa story. Zerby, so I see that you hopped in the middle of it. So we were actually just did the first chapter of a fantasy story from Lewis. We're actually just about to hop into another reading of another chapter from another fantasy story by Mary. This one, I think this one is more magical. This one's going to be a little bit more magical, epic fantasy of the story we're about to hop into. Absolutely. Vaughn, that's really sweet of you. Thank you. If you're here on Vertical, Vaughn was just saying, absolutely. Here's a 400-word appreciation for Jared's channel. Hey, Jared, I just want to take a moment to express my heartfelt appreciation for the incredible content you've been creating on your channel. That means a lot. Thank you, my man. Appreciate you. That's really awesome. If there's one goal that I've had since starting this journey, it's how do I show my writing process, and then how do I show my beliefs and my values. I believe in being kind, being clear, and being creative. You combine those three and you put your stuff out to the world, and if you're clear with your expectations, you will find the people who care about it. So absolutely agree. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed the reading, Lewis. I hope I was able to do the characters proud. I hope I got Wart Nose all right. I hope Wart Nose gets kicked in the groin a couple more times. Thanks, Doreen. Thanks for hopping in. I'm glad that you enjoyed the reading. Okay, perfect. So with that being said, let me queue up Mary's story. What do I got here? So Mary, I got you with the crystals. All right, perfect. And now, before I get to before I hop into Mary's story, let's see where we're at. Let's go reading number 3. Let's do a little writing blurb. So, do you need a writing coach? Now, a lot of people don't actually know what is a writing coach and what is the value that what a writing coach's value provides to them. I just created a short little document here that lists this specific value. Writing coaching can help you with improving your story and help you get it from the rough draft to the final draft faster. Writing coaching provides consistency and accountability, especially if you're the type of person who, let's say that you probably have a day job, you probably have responsibilities like family, and sometimes if you're the type of person who you'll write for a few months, but then you'll fall out of it. Having a writing coach helps with keeping you motivated because sometimes the struggle is real. And especially as you're working on a story, imagine that you could be working on sections of your rough draft and that you could send sections over. You can get the type of feedback that you want, whether it's like specific critique, kind of like what I do on the show, or whether it's more editing type feedback, or maybe it's development. It works out really great for a lot of my clients because by the time they get halfway into their rough drafts, they have a greater understanding of their world, their characters, and their story because they've been able to talk through it with someone else. A lot of times what I see with writers is they develop the story, they write it, and then they take the development, and then once they finish the rough draft, now they're left with all the problems of the story that they know how to work through. When they're able to work through these problems early on, and then they're able to improve on them chapter by chapter, section by section, it just speeds up the entire process. And then when they hire an editor, whether that's me or somebody else, it doesn't matter, then the editing process goes faster because so much more of it is more strongly written. And by the time they get to the end of their drafts, their skills as a writer have also improved because I try to focus on balancing coaching and improving the storytelling and improving their skill building as writers. So that's a little blurb on my coaching. This just kind of lists all the value that I bring. And if you're here in the vertical format, it just same day story analysis feedback, story development sessions, book publication strategies. I'm partnered with a couple book publishing networks. Super cool. I make myself available 24/7 for my clients because I know clients come from all over the world. Also, the intellectual property contract. We sign a contract with our clients because there's a fear out there of if I put my story out there that it's going to be stolen by somebody. It's a very real fear. So I create a contract so that way you know that your property is safe. So I want to throw that out there. If you want to know more, shoot me a message at my email, which is actually, it's on the ticker below and above. So just shoot me a message, kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com. Beautiful. Thanks, Lewis. Yeah, I think right now I think my 3Cs right now kind of becomes like a 1K and 2Cs. It's be kind, be confident, be creative. I was like, I need to find, but like, I'll find a better word choice for kind so it can actually be 3Cs. Yeah, it is. Doreen, thanks for the call out. 2Cs and a K. I needed to start every stream off with that now. Kind, confident, creative. Okay, so let's hop into, with my writing coaching blurb out of the way, let's get into Mary Crystals, reading number 3. Let me throw that up at the ticker in the bottom. All right, and I am all set on my end. Perfect. And it looks like I've got to reset my timer. Beautiful. Oh, I'm so happy I got a more colorful timer. For those of you who've been with me for a while, I finally updated my timer and some of my music this week. So I'm like super stoked about that. Okay, and let me throw up the right banner. Perfect. And we're here with Crystals by Mary. And once again, let me just do one more shout out for our quote of the day game. Make sure, keep those comments coming. Keep the clever and the supportive, the really great critiques coming. I'm keeping track of the comments that stand out. At the end of the stream, I'm going to announce the winner of the game. So keep commenting and keep coming, whether you're on horizontal or the vertical format. All right, beautiful. And let me, I love it. Lewis, I absolutely love, I have to call this out because there's some really great comments here in the horizontal stream. Lewis, you're saying yours is care, connect, create. That's beautiful. Absolutely love that. Care, connect, create. I love that. Thanks for sharing. Confidentiality is important in the publishing world like this. Rumors have it that Jared ghostwrote Jay-Z's novel, but the NDA makes him not be able to say. You never know. I mean, there's so many projects I've done out there. That's actually the challenge with being a ghostwriter. I've done so many ghostwriting projects, but all of them are NDA. So like 9 times out of 10, I'm not able to speak to any of the ghostwriting projects I've done. I've done a couple of ghostwriting projects for some actually pretty big influencers, which was actually super cool. And I definitely appreciate them and I connect with them, but I can't speak to them. Like, I can't say that I've written that thing because it would be breaking my NDA. Every once in a while, there's some clients who are like, oh yeah, I don't care, you can tell the world. But usually with like some really bigger brands, it's not able to. So you never know. Maybe there was a Jay-Z novel in there. Ooh, I like that, Doreen. Charitable, clear, and creative. Very good word choice. I almost feel like I should throw out like a poll. Maybe I should do a poll at some point and see if what words resonate with people. That's really cool. Okay. All right. I am ready. Crystals by Mary Last, Chapter 2. As they grew older, the urchins eventually disbanded. In ones and twos, they left for better pickings. Only a few like Mole still lingered and scurried about, joining either Jasper or Danessa, or both from time to time, to acquire food and other supplies. On a spring day before their 16th birthday, in the rooms on the top floor of one of the taller houses, Jasper was idly carving a design on a random piece of wood, and Danessa was sitting on the rough window ledge. She was holding her up Crystal and staring into the fog that was covering the broken and deserted town. She suddenly broke the silence. Do you ever wonder about our father? Jasper started. No, I guess not, since we were kids. Why? What in the world made you think of him? I was just dreaming what he looked like. Sometimes I think he looks like that man from the castle. What's his name? That really nice one who sometimes gives us bread and pastries. Jasper nodded. I know who you mean. He's just a cook or something, isn't he? Danessa continued in a slightly dreamy voice. You favor Mother and Aunt Gwen. I wonder if I took after our father. Wondering where we would all be if he were still alive. If he was like us. You know what I mean. If one of these crystals was his. Jasper put down his knife and carving and looked over at her. I guess we'll never know. I do remember one or two of the stories Mother told us. But after a while, I felt she was, well, just making it up. Like the fairy tales she told us to put us to sleep. I don't believe that. Mother wouldn't lie. I know she kept secrets, but I will never think of her lying to us. She only kept those secrets to protect us. Jasper sighed and went back to his carving. Secrets, he thought. Lying by omission is still a kind of lying. So I guess, like magic, there's both good and bad in anyone. He wondered also what else may have been kept from them. He often felt that Aunt Gwen had not told all she knew. Secrets were also being kept in the palace. It was now high summer, and King Wyatt was settled in. It was said he was unconventional but happy. He wanted his people to love him, which he thought would discourage any ideas of rebellions. Therefore, he allowed them their gatherings and celebrations. But there was one thing he was very serious and passionate about. He heard tales of magic orbs and was determined to acquire them. His private guards and head advisor tried to convince him they no longer existed. If indeed they ever really did, and tried to keep everyone in the palace, in the dark of their king's ambitions. As in any palace, there were spies. King Wyatt's was no exception. Some were spying on him, and some were spying for him. Some did both. Gareth was one who spied on the king. He was a man with a past that was better forgotten. But there were reasons he could never forget. Reasons why the king needed watching. Working in the kitchens, Gareth heard all the palace gossip, including how the king wanted to acquire some magic crystals. When he went to buy provisions, Gareth heard more gossip from the townsfolk. It seemed some things were not as secret as thought to be. Gareth was kind and gentle. He had an easy laugh and was trusted by all. He listened to all the chatter, but refused to gossip. His appearance in the marketplace was a most welcome sight. It was known he made the best pastries and spent well. When there were leavings from the palace, he gave them to the less fortunate and, on occasion, took care not to notice the poorer kids who pitched some scrap or another from an unobservant vendor. Gareth caught rumblings that King's obsession with the crystals was growing each week, and how wild ideas would come to him, dreams of even more wealth and power. His every wish would come true. Each day, the wilder the rumors became. The king became secretive, consultations with his advisors as to how to find out where the orbs were and what witches had them. They had to be witches, didn't they? Magic always went with witches. A contest, one of his advisors suggested. A special and very difficult contest, so that whoever had crystals would have to use them. The king roared. What pitiful idea are you trying to pass off? Of course they would not be used openly. As kind and generous as he was to his people, he could be hard and almost cruel in private. Sire, they have not been heard of in many years, and then only in legends, dared one of the advisors. That earned him a smack on the side of the head. Nonsense! I know they exist. Have my personal guards examine every citizen if you must. Get them to talk. Someone must know. Pay special attention to those healers. So the guards went out to the town, searching, asking, begging for any information about who might own the crystals or anyone who may be practicing magic. There was even a reward offered for any valid information. Either no one knew or they refused to admit any knowledge. And since they didn't want to be involved with the king's inspections, the healers disappeared. They seemed to all have been mysteriously called away to other communities, or so they told the townsfolk. It seemed no one could or would help. That is until one old ratty window woman came into the tavern. End excerpt. Whew, I was, wow, I really liked that. Mary, I absolutely loved the improvements that you made with that piece. That was a much better sound piece of storytelling. Really, really great work. Really, really great. I was like, I didn't know where the section ended, and I wanted the section with the ratty old woman that we had read a couple episodes ago, which was really funny. So, really great work. So we got two major sections to this story. I would say we got the section with the siblings, who are our protagonists, who are our heroes, with Jasper and Danessa. I think in this iteration of the story, you've done a really good job of improving the overall world building. I feel like I'm in a much clearer world now. We could still dive into a little bit more details in terms of like what might be going on in the greater world outside of this kingdom. And why does the king want the crystal right now? I think you've done a really good job of improving the overall conflict. It's clear that there's definitely like a need and a desire for the crystals, and that the king is clearly going through this journey of like, okay, like the king's kind of becoming like a little more frantic, and clearly like I like that you kind of set the king up as this like he's this like wise ruler. But then you end up on when he's with his servants, he's like cruel and he's an asshole. I'm like, oh, perfect. Great dynamic, great mix between the two types of his personalities. Jasper and Danessa. I love the dialogue with Jasper and Danessa. It's much more fluid. Much, much more fluid. I feel like their conversation feels a little more, it just works. And especially as they're asking now, they're kind of thinking through like, oh, my father. And I'm kind of thinking of like, oh, could our father have been this? I think that was actually really well done. I love that. Really great work. Really, really great work. Let's see. What could have been improved? I think, so I would say character development definitely for the win. Dialogue was a huge win in this one. The structure, I'm all for the structure. The way you formatted the chapter, brilliant. Keep it like that. Huge improvement over our last time, which was really, really great. Let's see. And then I'm even getting some good agreements in the chat. Let's see. Doreen said, this piece has a great flow, even though it could be a tiny bit less telly and a little more scene. The dialogue was great. Yep. And I'm going to actually get into that in just a second because there's a couple areas where it could do a little more show and a little less tell. Where it was at previously, though, you've gone leaps and bounds. Now, where in the previous iteration, Mary, you had like this much refining to do. Now we're kind of like here and like we have like this much refining to do. But where we're at now, it's clear what's going on. And I want to say really, really great work. Tomic brought up a great line as well on our vertical. Tomic said the line, quote, pay special attention to those humans. Is this a non-human society? How do they differ from the humans? Maybe I missed something previously. So that's actually a really great call out, Mary, as you're listening to the stream. So let's dig into it because you guys are actually all touching onto something that's standing out to me. So as I go into the story itself, we'll start off with the Jasper and Danessa bit. Jasper and Danessa's section is clear. It's clear where they're at. I know you set up their stories in the previous chapter of how they got into a mole and the urchins, and you give enough description here that that's fine. I'm actually really good with this. I actually think of the two of them, it's hard. The Jasper and Danessa's chapter is actually stronger, or the section is stronger of the two. It's stronger. I'm trying to think of what I could add. You have here, she was staring her up, I think this was just a mistypo. She was holding up her crystal and staring into the fog that was covering the broken and deserted town. That's interesting. I was like, ooh, this town is like foggy and it's kind of creepy. Mary, I would actually recommend like you should start off the chapter with this because this is interesting. I would start off with this right here, the sentence, and then as she pulls away, you could do the urchin. Oh no, because this is a time jump. Hold on. Choose them for better picking. Actually, never mind. Ignore that comment because this you time jumped from the last one. So actually, never mind that. What I would do then is I would actually have this be its own paragraph. So that way it starts its own idea. I would start this, and this is just like a technical suggestion. Do you ever wonder about our father? Because this is a little stronger. Do you ever wonder about our father? And I would move that here. Do you ever wonder about our father? Janessa suddenly broke the silence. I would still get rid of suddenly. Suddenly is like a thing. It's one of those words that like we like to overuse. I overuse it. But I think the sentence, the speech tag would work for itself. And then I would do it like that. That's just a little stronger. That engages me, right? Because that's the specific dialogue that's what breaks up this moment. I have this. Janessa was sitting on the rough window ledge. Do you ever wonder about her father? Janessa, I don't say like questioned. Pondered. Janessa pondered. As she broke the silence. Or you could say pondered, breaking the silence, just a me thing. She was holding up her crystal and staring into the fog that was covering the broken and deserted town. You could even like do a little more of like the fog covered the rooftops. You could do a little more world building here if you really wanted to give me a sense of what the town looks like specifically, but that would be the opportunity to. What in the world? And then this is good. Their dialogue is great. I love it. And you have the good action, so it's clear what's happening between the two of them, which works very well. I think his dialogue, you can just cut down a little bit on just wordiness, just a little editing down. But overall good. Now, okay, so this is actually a really, really great example of using italics. So even though like this is in his head right now, the italics makes this stand out and it works because we're right now in his point of view and the author wants to highlight this specific thing. Line omission is still a kind of line. So I guess like magic. There's both good and bad in any one. This is a great use of italics to emphasize a point. And I think it works there. The only thing I would adjust for this is, Mary, just ask yourself, who is the point of view character in this section? I think it felt pretty neutral in the beginning. Janessa ponder, that's what I changed. Janessa broke the silence. Ponder, she broke the silence. So I would, who is the point of view character in this chapter? Even though it's about both of them, who are we seeing this chapter through technically? Because right now we have Jasper, we have interiority here, which means that Jasper is our point of view character. If that's the case, then before Janessa even speaks in this section, I would start off with Jasper's point of view. Jasper looked at his sister. Jasper pricked his knife. Jasper pricked his finger with the knife. Just an example. With the knife as he looked up at his sister. The knife as he glanced at his sister, who was in a daze. There you go. Something simple like that. But we want to start off, since if it is Jasper's point of view for that reason. It'd make that a little clearer. And then essentially we know, okay, so we're hearing this part of the story through Jasper's point of view between what's going on between him and Janessa. Okay, awesome. I'm good with that part. I want to hop into the palace section. The palace section was actually pretty good with where it was at before, Mary. Like this is you've gone leaps and bounds with the section. This was really, really great work. So what I would do. So right now we have the king and we have Gareth, and we have two separate sections. So we have two separate characters for this whole section. And I would say it's so improved from where it was at before. I would say I love that you've done more work on setting up the king and setting up the king as kind of like a character. It feels like the king is more kind of like important to the overall world of the story and the plot. And I like that you've set up Gareth. I think there's absolutely opportunities in the king section to just cut down. It's just editing down on the king section. And it's more just editing down on like word choice and making the sentences a little shorter. From a plot perspective, I think it would actually be stronger. So two recommendations, Mary. Keep the overall flow of it the way it is because it works really well now. But I might recommend having introducing Gareth in the beginning. I might recommend introducing Gareth here because it kind of feels like Gareth is our point of view character, but I understand why you're introducing it as the king. I think it could be a little more powerful if we get Gareth as our point of view. I just think it would be stronger. Yeah, as I'm like kind of thinking about the way I would go about this. I think what could really work, Mary, is I feel like I get that the king is motivated to want to go find the orbs because like he needs it. He has this desire. I don't secretive consultations. I don't think it's clear yet why the king is so obsessed with them, but I don't think we actually have to know that right now. That's fine. That's a character development thing that we can actually learn later. But I think right now, like that the king's obsessed with them is good. I think what would improve this is I feel like there needs to be a specific moment or a specific event of why the king is obsessed right now, this very moment. What is the exact reason that the king needs the orbs right now? And that's what's missing. That's what's missing from this. Um, Yeah. So I would almost recommend of having like the servant. Maybe like there's the Gareth. Maybe Gareth passes by as he watches like the servant telling the king. So you have this scene with the king where the servants are kind of talking to him a little bit, which is good. This contest thing. Um, and this would actually be a really good moment for us to learn why now. Um, and this is a good thing for you to think about, Mary. Does the king want the orbs now because he wants power? Does he want the orbs now because somebody just attacked him with an orb? Does he want the orbs because there's an encroaching either kingdom or empire which is about to attack them, and they just came upon their border, right? Like we need what is the incident that makes the king think of like now is the time. And I think determining that will really help. You can make it an actual scene if you want, include it as part of this, or you could just mention it in passing. But we do need to know why now. And I think the reason I would start with Gareth, so I mean, you basically do start with him because he's the point of view character. I mean, you mentioned him in the second paragraph. So I think just in the first paragraph, I would just adjust it slightly in that it's clear that it's from Gareth's point of view. Because you're kind of using the first paragraph as setup, which is fine. But I want to feel like this is what Gareth's thoughts and Gareth is thinking this as compared to it's the narrator trying to tell me this. So I think this would be like secrets were also being kept in the palace. Gareth watched from afar, or Gareth found himself working the kitchens this day. There's so many different ways you could go about it, but I think by segmenting that this is Gareth's point of view, and then you do a little description here of Gareth down here, which is fine, but I think just making it clear that this section is from Gareth's POV will make it clearer. And then we know everything that's happening with the king, we're watching from Gareth. And I think that would actually make it stronger, especially the moment with the servants and the contest, like that's good. And like this is good. Like this can be Gareth doesn't technically need to be in these scenes, but if Gareth is a spy, he's probably well connected with all the other servants. So I would almost think that Gareth, the king began, Gareth knew many secrets from his network of spies. The king began secretive consultations with his advisors. And I think that would make it stronger, right? So now we're in Gareth's point of view. Like I said, there's so many different ways you can go about this, but I think it would make it stronger because we want to fall for Gareth. Like Gareth seems like an interesting character so far. And I think that would help segment us in the overall plot. And I really like this contest idea. I like what you're doing with the crystals. I just need to know what set this off. Or is the king the type where he's always looking for different magical objects? Then that would make this feel like, oh, okay, so he's always doing this. He's always looking for like the magic that's going to help him improve his empire. Or is there something that has instigated his need for the crystals right in this very moment? I think that would be good to touch upon. But this segment with the servant, with the advisors, actually works well. Dared one of the advisors. That earned him a smack on the side of the head. It's funny. And then this is good, and I can tell you're setting this up for the chase that we're going to be getting in the next sections. Perfect. And then this is a great thing where I would once again end it on Gareth. So we know Gareth's point of view. So we know that this is like all from Gareth's perspective. I would end on this. That is until one ratty old woman came into the tavern. And I hope that this is a Gareth scene actually, because that would actually tie it in really, really well of like, oh, Gareth is making the rounds around town or he's doing something. That would actually make that even better with the crazy old woman scene. That was super funny. So yeah, those are all my recommendations, Mary. You had some really great pieces on your story. Really, really great excerpts. Really, really great work. Let's see, just a bit late. I'm here. So Mary, you probably popped in like the middle of my critique. So I would say just make sure when the stream ends to make sure to go watch the replay, so that way you can hop into and read or listen to it from the beginning. But overall, Mary, like really, really great work. Huge improvements. I love the direction you're taking in the story. The way it's formatted and structured now feels like a whole different story from where it was at before. And just like you really took it to the next level. So I'm really proud of it. Thanks for sharing it. I'm eager to read the I'm eager to see the next chapter. I'm like really curious to see how the chase scenes go, and then I really want to see the Ratty Widow Woman scene again because she was absolutely hilarious. If you're gonna redo it or edit that, I want to see Ratty Widow Woman again. That was a great scene. Awesome, absolutely. Sweet. So we just got through that. So really great work. That was some really great storytelling. And now let's see, who do we have on deck? So we got Sean. So we got reading number 4. We got the next excerpt of Sean's script, Torrent, by Sean Spence. All right, so as you'll know, we did a section reading of this last weekend. We've been doing a couple sections of it. We're getting farther into the script. This is a little horror thriller script. We're really going to be able to read and see Miss Summers and this like horror vibe. It's like, it will be like a really cool thing. So I'm going to hop into Sean's reading in just a second. But if you're enjoying the stream, let me pull it up here. Once again, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. I do daily writing streams, casual writing communities, story and critique group, live best-selling book readings, and author interviews. Every single day is a different experience. So if you're subscribed on YouTube or following from one of the other platforms, you'll be notified when I go live. All right, beautiful. And then also, once again, make sure that you keep those comments coming because we are doing our quote of the day game. And whichever comments stand out, I will be announcing at the end of the stream, and they will be getting added to our writer quote leaderboard, which I'm currently developing right now. So keep them coming. All right, so let's hop into Sean's story, Torrent. Perfect. All right, and then let me pull it up here, and I have to adjust my timer. All right, and I am all set on my end. So, all right, so we got a script. This is another little horror excerpt. This is a thriller horror with our serial killer, Miss Summers. Let's see what happens with good old Miss Summers over here. Okay. So let's see. We got Miss Summers. So I got 20 minutes on the clock. Let's see. Is cool. Right. Let's see. Got to turn off Grammarly. All right. Perfect. So let's get into it. I got 20 minutes in the clock, and gotta make sure I adjust here. Perfect. Torrent, pages 52 through 59. Exterior neighborhood, afternoon. Miss Summers drives down the street and pulls over to the side. She exits her car with a shovel. She walks up to a dead raccoon laying on the side of the road. A local homeowner, 49, dressed in a robe and slippers and holding a beer can, opens his door and walks onto his porch. I called animal control already. You don't have to do that? It's my pleasure. Just doing my part to keep the vermin off the street. The raccoon's tail flinches. Miss Summers swings the shovel from over her head, slamming it onto the raccoon. Jesus Christ! It's better when the innocent creatures don't suffer. Miss Summers shovels the dead animal up, pops her hatch, and places the raccoon and shovel in the back. As she shuts her hatch, a car blaring music with too much bass, turns the corner and heads in her direction. The homeowner quickly enters his house. Miss Summers stands her ground as the car passes. The driver, covered in tattoos, stares at her from the open window while other gang members hang out their windows. "What the hell are you looking at, you old hag?" One of the gang members throws a drink at her from the back seat, hitting her square in the face. What the rain doesn't wash away, Miss Summers wipes from her eyes before glaring back at the car of gangsters. The driver stares her down before slamming on the gas. Then others in the car laugh. "You better run, you cowards!" Miss Summers quickly gets in her car and chases the gangsters around the corner, out of sight. Exterior middle school parking lot, afternoon, same day. Eric sits on the school steps. Brad pulls up to Eric in a 1989 light blue Ford Escort and honks the horn. Eric runs up to the car and gets in. Ford Escort continuous. Brad sits in the driver's seat, typing on his cell phone, while Eric buckles his seatbelt. "So, how was it?" "It sucked." "Did you make any new friends?" "Yeah, he's in the trunk." Eric looks towards the back of the car. "Seriously?" "No, not seriously. God, you're an idiot." Eric sits watching Brad continue to type away on his phone. "Dad?" Brad doesn't respond. "What aren't you telling him?" "What do you think? I'm telling him that the day was a complete waste and that I hate it here." Brad continues to type. "That's a lot of typing just to say you hate it here." "I'm telling him we should be home soon." Brad finishes typing and sends the text. "I'm hungry. What do you say we pick up something on the way home?" "But Dad said That wasn't a question. We're picking up dinner and that's it." Brad finishes typing and sends the text. Interior dinner, afternoon. Billy's cell phone dings. He looks to see a text from Brad. "The boys are heading home." They don't text every day. He was just telling me he's heading home. "Why, yes. Kids were one of the best decisions I ever made." "You wouldn't see it, but I noticed a little bit of their mother in them." "Yeah, well, there's something to be said for the single life." "Whoa, you could let other people talk and not hog the whole conversation." Nick is not amused. "So, you've never been married?" "I never said that." "Divorced?" "You'll find out that I am very persistent." "Well, my wife left me, said I was married to the job." "Sorry to hear that. I guess I got lucky. My wife loved being married to a cop." "Didn't do her much good." Billy glares at Nick. "I'm not being insensitive. I was..." Billy gets up from the table, his anger barely containable. "Look, I was just saying that we can't protect everyone." Billy heads for the front door. As he exits, Nick remains seated, finishing his coffee. Exterior neighborhood, afternoon. A torrential downpour. Sewage flows out of the drains. Miss Summers sits behind the wheel of her car at a stop sign. The streets are devoid of traffic. She pulls away slowly into the intersection and turns the corner. A light blue Ford Escort is parked on the side of the road. Its hood is popped. Brad pokes his head from behind the opened hood, seemingly talking to someone in the driver's seat. As Miss Summers passes the car, she sees Eric behind the wheel, unsuccessfully trying to start the car. Brad fiddles with something under the hood. He looks up at the shadow driver through the semi-fogged side window of the passing car. Interior Miss Summers' car continuous. As Miss Summers drives past the boys and up the water-soaked streets, she slows her car to a crawl, watching Eric in the side mirror exit his car to meet his brother. Miss Summers. "Well, this just got interesting." Exterior neighborhood continuous. Eric watches as the car passes. Here's someone. The boys observe as the car drives down the street. Suddenly, the brake light shines a brighter red. The car comes to a stop and sits in the middle of the street, idling. The two boys stare at the motionless car. "What do you think?" Brad tries to look through the fogged-up rear window of the car, but is unsuccessful. "Come on." Brad shuts the hood of the Escort and grabs Eric's hand. The boys walk on the sidewalk, catching up to the idling car. As they begin to pass, the passenger side window rolls down. "Car trouble?" The boys share a glance and smile at the woman behind the wheel. "Can't seem to figure out what went wrong with this hunk of junk." Miss Summers. "Please tell me you called AAA." Yeah, but they said it would be a while. They're pretty busy with all this rain. Well, I don't think they're lying. I guess. Our phone died pretty soon after, too. Brad looks down at his cell phone, showing 2% battery life. The boys look at each other. The rain begins to come down harder. Miss Summers glances up the empty street. Interior Miss Summers' car continuous. Miss Summers sees no cars in front of her. She glances into the rear view mirror. Nothing. Focusing back on the boys, she smiles in a grandmotherly way. How about this? How about I take you two to my place and make you a nice warm meal? Because it seems as if you have had a rough day. And then after that, we'll call your folks from my landline to see if they want me to drop you off, or maybe even stop by and pick you up. How does that sound? That would be great. You saved our lives, lady. Oh, it's my pleasure. And Miss Summers, now get out of the rain before you're as wrinkly as me. The boys open the car door and jump in the back seat. But don't get my seats wet. Silence. Miss Summers begins to laugh. The boys join in. I live right up here, so it'll be a short ride. As the car pulls away from the curb, the rain falls harder on the slick roads. Miss Summers' car turns the corner, driving out of sight. Woo, man, talk about the suspense. We are really upping the suspense and the thriller part of this. Wow. I was like, I wasn't expecting that we were going to have Miss Summers taking the two boys of the cop. I was like, that's pretty clever. I think that's a really smart idea. I'm kind of back and forth on this section. There's like, I have a couple recommendations. I think I like the overall idea and approach to it, but I think there's a better execution for it. So we have the two sections. Well, technically we have the three sections. So we have the Billy and Eric section. Actually, no. So we have Miss Summers. We have Billy and Eric. We have Miss Summers. We have the Eric and Brad. And then we have Nick and Billy. And then back to Eric, Brad, and Miss Summers, essentially. So from a structural perspective, I like the raccoon bit, like with her shoveling the animal. I think that was actually really interesting. I think that was a really interesting call out. I like that. I think the raccoon or the dead animal, I think that's actually a really nice touch, and you should absolutely keep that portion. I like that. I think what lost me for this section is I don't like, because we already did the gang member from the previous section. So like, I don't know. It kind of feels unnecessary that we have the gang members driving down and that she goes on a car chase after the gang members. I get that she's a badass. That I totally agree. But also with her age, since she's an old woman, if somebody threw a bottle and it like hit you in the side of the head at that age, like she could end up in the hospital. So I think I would just adjust that. It feels like we have two coincidences here, and we could totally, like, you can get away with coincidences, but we have both the gang members are driving by, so she like gets upset and she starts driving after them. And then we have her passing by the boys and happens to stop by the boys. I think this would actually be stronger if she's actually intentionally following the gang members, and maybe she already was, and we just don't know that yet. But because we know that she killed she dealt with the other gang member, I think that she should be a little more intentional with her either following the gang members or following the boys. We know that she dealt with the previous gang member in the last chapter when he broke in. And then we also know that she has a vendetta against Billy, right? Especially if she was doing research. So it would actually track if she was following either one or both of them. Yeah, I would think that would be a little stronger. With the boy section, with Eric and Brad, it kind of feels like that she should intentionally pull up. Like, oh, I just happened to be here, when really she meant to be there because she really wants to. She's really going to be stealing the boys because Billy wronged her or whatever is going to happen. So I think I would just make that intentional. I might rework that, rework her motivation and how she shows up in those sections. So I think just the gang section, it just doesn't, the gang section just does, this portion doesn't work for me, but the previous gang sections have worked for me. So unless like this, it's important that she like, we have another gang section bit, but like clearly it's been clear so far in the script that she has a thing against the gang members. Like that's been very evident. And I think this gang part is kind of just feels like it's a little like overboard almost. Or just unnecessary from my POV. Let's see. And then we get to the Eric and Brad. I like that I get a little more personalities from them. Eric is the older one. Let's see. Eric was the texting one. No, it's Brad. What do you think? I'm telling him that the day was that I hate it here. Okay, yeah. So Brad is the stereotypical teenager, and Eric's kind of like the young one of like, oh, he's just young. Let's see. So yeah, so I like that. I like that there's way more distinction between them. I would say keep it coming. Push it even more. So that way it's clearer. Just so I don't like jumble up the names. So that way, so we don't jumble up the characters at all. If Eric is younger, maybe he's into superheroes or Marvel, or like have him make like references like that. Maybe that's like his thing. Whereas if Brad's like a teenager, he's like, that stuff sucks. And he's basically in his own world, basically. All the things that Brad says works great for me. Eric, I think I would just add on a little bit more flavor onto his character to make him stand out even more so. But I love the direction you're going in with them. And the overall content of their section works well for me. I love the whole typing thing. Like that's clever. I think that's funny. And I almost want them to like be pushing back at each other, like brothers fight. I almost want them to be like him trying to like reach for the phone and him like pushing him away. I think he could do something fun with that. It's kind of interesting that Eric is the one that's driving. Brad is the one that's driving. So Brad pulls up to Eric, and then so Brad is the one that's driving. No, not seriously. God, you're an idiot. Brad. It's kind of interesting from this scene. Brad kind of comes across as the spoiled teenager, and Eric kind of comes across as like the nice, like goody two shoes character. I had associated that with him just being young, but clearly he's just like more of a good, probably like father's boy, so to speak. So yeah, I would just continue to differentiate that. And then we get back into the Billy and Nick scene. This Billy texting, this section didn't work for me. It was kind of confusing. I didn't understand that Billy's cell phone dings. He looks to see a text from Brad. But now as I think about it, because they're still in the diner from the previous section that we read last time. So they're still in the diner, and that's what I had lost. So I think this would just be the same head. This would be a similar heading. Interior diner, afternoon. I think there's a heading for it, not continuous, but I think it's like same day or like shortly after or something like that. So that way we know that it's still the same Billy and Nick scene from 6 or 7 pages ago. But I think there's a specific heading for that. Yeah, and just like the way this was framed, I was confused of like, he says one thing, then a beat. I thought like, he said he was texting, but then I was like, okay, well, is he on the phone? Is he talking to himself? So I would just clarify. I would honestly just have him say one thing, like he's kind of maybe like mid-conversation, right? As he's like reading the text. I would literally like get rid of most of that, have him be saying one thing, like, and then start off with like a dot, and you wouldn't believe it, and you wouldn't see it, but I noticed a little bit of their mother in them. I would do that. And you wouldn't see it, but I noticed a little bit of their mother in them. I always worry about those boys. I always worry about those boys. Eric is so-and-so. Eric is sweet and innocent. Is sweet and innocent. Well, Brad is blah, blah, blah. But you get the point that I'm doing. I think this is like a good point. Just like make it a little short blurb. And it could be fun for him to talk about the characters, but that's just a subjective thing on my part. Let's see. Looks like we got a couple comments. Yeah, LeMay brought up a good comment, right? An elderly lady passed away when a woman shoved her down on the sidewalk. Yeah, and I think that's something that we're missing, Sean, with just you having to keep in mind Miss Summers' age. They're like a 70-year-old person or an 80-year-old person, like their body's going to be fragile. Like if they get hit in the side of the head with a bottle, they could die. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. I think Sean brought up a good point. He said really nice. He enjoyed it. He said, for me, the gang car didn't seem out of place, but chasing after them at that moment did. Okay. So Atomic actually liked that he was, that she chased after them. So there you go. So you see, it's entirely a subjective thing again. Let's see, Nick and Billy. I think the thing with the Billy and the Nick thing, Nick saying the asshole thing, I think that worked out really well. I think that was great. Nick being an insensitive asshole, good. I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that. So I think the back end of Nick and Billy's conversation is perfect. Leaving Nick to just sit there sipping his coffee. That was great. I love the torrential downpour that you got. Sewage flows out of the drains. Good. You know what I would do, actually, Sean, for this section with Miss Summers? I would have her. I would have her have like a printout of the picture with Billy, Eric, and Brad and the mom from when she did the research from the previous scene, and have her like look at see like one of the boys and look at the picture, so that way she knows. If you want that to be a happenstance thing where she happens to be passing by. I am of the belief, I think it would be stronger if she was, I think it would absolutely be stronger if she was following them intentionally. Because I'm getting the feeling that she's going to like hold him captive and something crazy is going to happen since she has a vendetta now against Billy. But I feel like it would be stronger if her choice was intentional to get Brad and Eric as compared to it being an unintentional coincidence. But if it's not like a whole like thriller thing and it's not her like hurting the boys or anything like that, and this is just like a little side plot, then keep it the way it is. If this is like a major story arc that we're about to embark on with Billy and then her, then I would make her character choice a little more intentional. That would be my recommendation. It's completely subjective. You could go either way. But yeah, I do like things can happen randomly, and we can have things happen happenstance. I always try to make things as intentional as possible for our characters to minimize the randomness, so that way you don't have people thinking of like, oh, so they just happen to be here. I try to minimize happenstance, even though happenstance happens in real life from storytelling. Too much happenstance is can pull the reader out or pull the viewer out. She's a grandmother. Like nobody's going to suspect a little old lady. So I'm mixed. I'm like, okay, the two boys getting in the car. I'm like, okay, so like they're not. Would two boys be understanding of a little old lady? I think it could work. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm like, okay, are you really going to get into a stranger's car? But it's technically, it's like a torrential downpour. It's horrible. Their car's not working. Their phone's broken. I think what I would do is I would have Miss Summers' paragraph start off with her solving the landline problem. With her like, why don't I take you to my place, you can call from my landline, and then end off with, and you can also have a nice meal. So that way it feels a little bit more like she wants to help them solve their problem, whereas her starting off with the nice warm meal kind of sounds like it's too much of an obvious ploy. And both of these boys are old enough to, they should be smart enough, especially with a dead mom. They've had to mature. So that would be my recommendation. I would just reorient how Miss Summers offers to help. But I think overall, I think that definitely could work. The don't get my seats wet bit is funny. Like, I totally see this as like a thriller moment. But don't get my seats wet. Silence. The boys, I even wanted to see like the boys look at each other. Silence. Silence. The boys look at each other awkwardly. Miss Summers begins to laugh. The boys join in. Yeah, and I'm good with the rest of that. So, awesome. There you go, my man. And then Lewis brought up a really good point. Miss Summers could be an ex-Marine, a tough old lady. That would actually give her way more physical credibility. Sean, I don't know, like maybe you probably do have a background for her and a whole backstory. I think that if her background was some type of physical thing, like Marine, any type of like combat type of character, that would actually make way more sense for her physical prowess. I actually think that would be a really smart decision. Granted, I don't know what her backstory is, and you may have already fleshed this out, but that would be a great idea if you haven't already. Absolutely. Great comment, Lewis. All right. Perfect. So that is all that I got for you, my friend. So that was a nice little reading, a nice little script. As always, you know that I'm looking forward to the next section of the story. And then Atomic had another good shout out here. Her Atomic said her not giving chase would also make sense if her focus was on the boys. Yeah. So I think if we do stick with the gang member section where she's chasing after the gangs, but she sees the boys and she's like, oh, Billy, I gotta fuck with Billy now. That would make more reason for her to stop. But don't get my seats wet would be even funnier if she said it sternly and loudly and then cracked a toothy smile after a few seconds. Agreed. I think that's what is happening, Atomic, but I think we could do, Sean, you could do a little more detail to give that like silence. Like, I want that moment to be as suspenseful as possible. Like, we know she's like the serial killer, but the boys don't know. So like, then you want the audience to feel of like, boys, recognize stranger danger. Don't get into the car, even though she's a sweet little old lady. She's gonna skin you alive. Like, that's you want the reader or the audience to be thinking, Sean. So great call out, Atomic. All right, beautiful. And so that, once again, I'm loving reading through that script. Thank you again, Sean. I'll look forward to the next section. And we're going to hop straight into reading number 5. Vaughn, A Christmas Reunion by Vaughn. So this is one of the projects that I helped Vaughn out with. I'm super excited to do a little reading and section from it. Because I've been involved in the project before, I'm going to do a little less of the critique portion and just do more of the, just focus in on the reading section itself. Let's see how it goes. But this is reading number 5 will be a Christian. It's called A Christmas Reunion. It's a drama. It's a nonfiction piece. And I am super excited to get into it. So I'm going to be throwing that up in just a second. Vaughn, I know you're here in the stream. Awesome. I know you're here, my man. And then let's see here. And let me throw up Vaughn's. Perfect. And let's see. What ad should we do? Let's go. Oh, let's do a share. By the way, if you're enjoying the stream, tap that share button. Share it with other writers. The more writers we bring into the community, the better commentary, the better feedback that you'll get for your story, and just the more types of writers that we bring in here. I love when we get writers who come from a fantasy genre, a sci-fi, horror, romance, because we get different perspectives, right? And we get different points of view, and I absolutely love that. Because storytelling at heart is still about telling a story about characters in a world that is believable to them. Whether that takes place with characters who are robots from outer space, or a serial killer in real life, or a romance or a high school romance that could have been, right? Any type of story, it's still character development at heart. So tap that share button. I really appreciate it. All right, so let's make sure we're sharing with a friend. You know a writer who needs help with their story? Share this with a friend. All right, and we're gonna hop right into reading number 5, A Christmas Reunion by Vaughn. And once again, don't forget, keep those comments coming, because our quote of the day game is still active. Do you have an idea? Is it clever? Is it helpful? Drop a comment and you could win the quote of the day. The winner will be added to a quote of the day leaderboard that I am currently developing. So keep those quotes coming. All right, and let's hop straight into A Christmas Story. Let's see, where did I have it? Perfect. So it's a Christmas reunion. I need to reset this. Beautiful. All right, so I got here. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to be starting off in chapter 6. It's a little ways into the story, but I think this will be a good point. Awesome. So let me throw it up on the screen. So this is called A Christmas Reunion. Let's see. Well, here, Christmas Reunion: A Tale of Love, Loss, and Chaos by Vaughn Vajgert. I was like, Vaughn. I was like, how do I say your name right? Vajgert. Like I'm gonna butcher that. Okay, excellent. So let's go. So A Christmas Reunion. So to give a little context, we're going to be skipping the first couple of chapters. We're going to be starting with chapter 6. Perfect. We have our hero, our protagonist. D is on a journey of a lifetime to go reconnect with his estranged daughter, Val, as he's going through a winter wonderland to try to reconnect with her at all cost, because he needs a Christmas miracle. All right, so let's get into it. I got 20 minutes on the clock. A Christmas Tale, chapter 6. Valerie's contact information glared brightly at him. He pressed the call button again. No cigar. It went straight to voicemail. Her phone must be off. He glanced up at the snowy road. Before he could toss the phone away, a notification popped up. Low battery, 20% battery remaining, low power mode, close. D tapped on the low power option. He tossed the phone on the dashboard. It didn't matter none. Both the journey to and the pit stop in Reno had been smooth sailing. That drive to Reno had given him a solid idea of what else to get her. Once she saw what he had in store for her, was she going to love him even more? He was known for his gift-giving, after all. He glanced at the triple-bagged surprise for Valerie, which had been moved to the front seat. Alongside it now sat a small, expertly wrapped present. Dee squinted at the road up ahead. The 2-lane stretch of I-80 felt longer than he remembered. He was beginning to see more cars the closer he got to Truckee. Since leaving Reno, the light snowflakes had changed into a heavy snowfall. He'd been through worse. At least he had none of that fog to worry about anymore. His fingers were beginning to ache like crazy. Reluctantly, he rolled the window up. While keeping one hand on the wheel, he stretched one set of fingers out slowly, then the other. Man, arthritis sucks. As if right on cue, he let out a series of coughs. He reached for a giant coffee thermos and knocked back a few more swigs. Almost empty. Who needed overpriced Starbucks crap when he could have the good old cheap stuff straight from his own coffee machine? Yeah, now that's right. Let's do this. He pumped himself up again. This storm was going to pass. He was going to get to his daughter. She was going to love him and hug him as he told her all about his recent accomplishments. Dee grinned. Maybe he should call her again. Before he could reach for the phone, he spotted a flashing sign up in the distance. Winter storm warning. Chains required. Expect delay 6 hours. Tune in to local station WKFM for more information. Ah, hell, Dee raged. You're going to make me miss Christmas at that rate. What time was it? Late afternoon? But it looked like nightfall, what with those angry clouds up above. Dee tapped the steering wheel now, gritting through the pain of his aching fingers. Truckee had to be at least another 15 miles up the road. He was so close. Dee knew his baby could plow through any snowstorm without a hitch. If he got stuck in that traffic, there would be no Christmas miracle for him. He snapped his fingers. The idea of a lifetime came to him. He knocked on the sticky note-covered dashboard. He could cut through Glenshire and be there in no time. This was his moment. Just like that, he swerved the office into a turn, nearly missing the off-ramp due to the heavy snowfall. He caught it just in time, because up ahead the cars were stopped on the road. He knew this was a genius idea. He could see it now. The image became clear in his head. There she was in the distance. Valerie saw him from afar. She ran towards him, laughing, skipping, and there he was in all his muscular glory as he caught her in a warm embrace and swung her around in circles. Dee knew if he ever allowed himself to cry, that moment right there would have done it. He let out a cough as the office started the ascent up a long, windy little road. Shoot! He hoped no one was coming down. His baby nearly took up both lanes. The snowfall outside was turning into something awful. He rolled the window back down for the view, aching fingers be damned. He peered out in the distance at the canyon that marked the previous part of his journey from Reno. The snowfall was very difficult to see through now. As he was about to let out another cough, the office beat him to it with a loud grinding sound that flared up from the engine. That wasn't good. Dee kicked the pedal to the metal. They sped up. He turned his head in all directions. Sticky notes began flying out the window. The office roared with a louder, grinding sound. Smoke rose from beneath the hood. Dee held onto the wheel frantically for dear life. His foot pressed the gas pedal. Sticky notes flew in every direction. The office let out a nasty screech. More smoke poured out. More noises poured out. The deadly check engine light flicked on. "You got this, baby!" he roared like a madman. The office lost all power. The momentum carried it further and a little farther, and just enough as it crested the rise of the hill. Dee smacked the gear into neutral as it cruised to the side of the road. Dee and the office slid to a jarring halt. Dee bashed the door open and jumped outside. He lifted the hood to be greeted by a wave of smoke. A groan escaped his throat. Even if she could be repaired, this was no time. Dee looked out across the canyon as he pondered his options. What would Schwarzenegger do? A grim determination washed over him. He carefully shut the hood. He then removed his cowboy hat, held it close to his chest with one hand, and rested the other hand on the hood. He wasn't going to cry. Real men don't cry. No toes coming out here on Christmas. This was all you, baby. I'll come back for you and fix you up real good. Dee patted the hood gently. He now felt the harsh snow blowing against his face. He was cold. Nothing was going to stop him, though. He had a daughter to save. Dee walked back around to the driver's door, which he had left hanging open. The road behind them was covered in sticky notes. Nothing to be done about that now. He got back in the car, shut the door, and soaked up the warmth. It only took him a few minutes to change. In no time at all, Dee opened the door and stepped back out with clothing more suited for the journey ahead. He was nothing if not prepared, due to a lifetime of adventure. He patted down the yellow snow pants, zipped up the neon green jacket, and replaced his hat with a bright orange beanie. He grabbed his go bag and peered inside. There was a mix of food, water, and winter necessities. He reached for another much smaller knapsack and gently put both of Valerie's presents inside. He then swung his go bag over both shoulders like a backpack and the present bag over his head shoulder like a knapsack. Before he could shut the door, he snapped. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a pair of snowshoes. He kissed them and then attached them to the side of his backpack. Dee shut the door and gave the office one last pat. Wish me luck, baby. He walked away. He had prepared himself for the unexpected leg of this journey. He rubbed his aching fingers before sliding on a brightly colored pair of ultra-warm gloves. This would be nothing. What was it, 10, 15 miles to town? He could hike that in his sleep. He walked a little further ahead while following the road beyond the hill. Dee stopped himself and turned to look back. Ah, hell. He couldn't have walked more than a quarter mile from the office, but it was already obscured by the fog of a whiteout. Part 3, Eye of the Storm. Chapter 7. The snowstorm raged outside. Hail like snowflakes pelted the window. The storm made the world feel like it was falling apart. Time had lost all meaning. Inject it like this or do it here, a voice repeated. Val turned away from the window, back to the situation at hand. The young intern was smart for her age, but she still had a lot to learn. They all did in the age of a global pandemic. Val instructed, "Stop! What are you about to administer?" The shy young intern looked down at the syringe in her hands. She then used the knuckles of her free hand to push the glasses up the ridge of her nose, which made her green eyes appear larger. I know it. It's a prophylactic dose of heparin, I believe. Good. Never administer a dose of anything unless you know its purpose. Yes. Thanks, Nurse Val. Val's fine. She signed off on a clipboard near the patient's bed before soaring out of the room. She was greeted by the familiar sounds of hospital chaos. The intern tried to catch up. Val marched down the hallway on a mission. She stuck her head in a passing room. "John, they both need 2 cc's of that. We okayed it with the doctor. They'll be fine." As they passed by the nurse's station, 3 phones rang simultaneously. But the one available staffer was struggling to handle one phone call while trying to calm down an angry intake patient. Val raised her fingers for the intern and pointed at the center phone while she answered the one closest. She slid over the counter while consoling a frantic mother with non-existent conditions. She put the phone back on the hook. Val stopped next to the staffer and offered him an all-knowing wink. She calmly spoke to the angry intake patient. "Do you see those patients down that far hall over there?" The angry patient's gaze followed where she pointed. "They may die of COVID-19 within the next hour." The patient's anger evaporated and was replaced by one of shock. Val started writing something down on the staffer's clipboard. "Now, we're going to move you up the list because you've been waiting and you're in pain. Please sit and we'll call you up shortly." Val circled new intake directions on the staffer's clipboard. He looked up at her with a smile of gratitude. Val continued down the hall. They rounded a corner with a group of caroling children. Val held her hand out behind her back, and the intern handed over some lollipops. She offered them to the children, along with some praise and Christmas cheer before they moved on. At long last, they reached an empty break room, which Val slipped into for a momentary respite. She leaned against the wall as she let out a deep breath. Her hydro flask still rested right on the counter from earlier. As she took a sip, the intern rushed into the room out of breath. "You're a total badass. Sorry for the language, but how are you not the head nurse?" Val laughed unexpectedly and responded, "Thanks. I'm a traveling nurse. You're doing a great job keeping up, though." The intern pushed up her glasses and adjusted her mask, but Val could tell she was smiling. "Now, can you go check on patient 102, Donnie? He's been on oxygen for a while." The intern saluted and rushed out of the room. Ding! Val reached into her pocket for her phone. She felt the wet envelope and hesitated, but chose to ignore it. The phone screen lit up and a text message read, "Wild child. The guys are missing your help over here in the wildlands. Maybe next time you're around, I show you that music festival. It's fire. Talk soon." Val couldn't stop from smiling, even though he was probably just like every other guy who put on appearances and called her Barbie just to get at her. She'd respond later when lives weren't at stake. She finished the water and set it down. Before she could step out of the room, the intern rushed back in, nearly bumping into her. I need you. Patient, he's... A deep knot appeared in the pit of her stomach. She could tell by the intern's face what she was about to walk into. Val rested her hand on the intern's shoulder. "Never forget. You can only do your best." The intern nodded bravely. "Regret serves..." Val paused, as if hearing her own advice. She realized it felt like her father's letter was burning a hole in her pocket. "Regret." Val shook her head and finished. "Regret serves no one." Val strode into patient 102's room. Donnie was an older gentleman in his late 60s, with short brown hair that had begun to gray, and dark spots under his eyes. Tears streamed down his face, and the removable oxygen ventilator rested under his chin. It wasn't the top-grade ventilators that he so desperately needed, but it was the equipment they had. Val whispered over her shoulder to the intern, "Find the doctor, ASAP." Now alone, she approached the bed and pressed a red button underneath the monitor. She then went to grab the oxygen ventilator from beneath his chin, but Donnie grabbed her arm in a death grip. He looked up at her with tear-stricken eyes. He tried to speak, but could only cough. Val tried to grab the ventilator, but his iron grip held her. She stood there, frozen in that moment, as he peered up into her eyes, looking into her soul. Tell them, he wheezed in between more coughing. "I'm sorry. I worked." More coughing. "The time I..." And more coughing. "Regret all the moments." More coughing accompanied by blood. "I love..." His eyes lost their sparkle as they stared blankly into space. His breathing ceased, and his head thudded against the pillow. Two pairs of hands pushed past her in a frenzy. She stepped back and watched them attempt resuscitation. There was a small hope. His chest rose up as air was forced into his lungs. Nothing. They repeated the process a second and a third time until, "Call it time of death," the doctor announced ceremoniously. Val continued with an air of steel. "Lucas, please remove that oxygen, decontaminate it, and take it to room 306. Stop." A hand rested briefly on her shoulder. Val looked over at the doctor, her boss, and they nodded at each other. The intern rushed into the room behind them and shouted, "Is he..." Val cut off. "Where's his family?" "On their way, but the snowstorm..." When the staffers trailed off. Val turned around to the intern and intoned, "Chin up. Regret serves no one." She rushed out of the room into the next task at hand, leaving the intern standing behind in shock. Val waved to the staffer at the nurse's station, who now appeared to be a little less overwhelmed. She nodded to a few of the patients in the waiting rooms she passed by. She stuck her head in to reassure patient 306. She smiled at the group of children sucking on their lollipops. "Kelly, Marcos, Eddie," Val whispered under her breath. They were the names of the last 3 patients she had helped to save. Val waved at a passing nurse. She repeated the names again and again and again. Val found herself at the restroom door and quickly let herself in. She locked it behind her and walked to the opposite wall. She turned around, pressed her back against the wall, and slid down it. By the time she hit the ground, Val was sobbing uncontrollably. She let out her exhaustion, anger, and frustration with each passing tear. Without letting a sound escape her lips, she cried. She cried for Donnie and his last regrets. She cried for the patients she had lost and those who were yet to lose their lives to this terrible virus. She cried for the homeless who died on the streets, feeling the invisibility of their lives pass them by. She cried for the suffering her friends felt with their demons. She cried for everything that she was worth. She then cried for herself. Valerie wiped her face off. She reached in her pocket for the envelope. She pulled out the card. One side was empty, while the other side was full of writing. She recognized his awful cursive and signature M's, which almost made her laugh. Unfortunately, the top half of the letter was smeared and unreadable due to the snow. "And that is what I meant. I had Katie's help with this. You know I'm no good with words, but I like you, kid. Go for the gold. D. P.S. I forgot. Merry Christmas. P.S.S. Next time I see you, you'll get the gift of a lifetime, promise. P.S.S.S. Is that too many S's? Remind me to tell you about my world record." Val reread the smeared letter again and again as she tried to deal with the mix of happiness, anger, and resentment in her heart. "He'll never change," she whispered. Something dawned on her at that moment. Maybe he wasn't the only one who needed a change. Val retrieved from the phone from her other pocket and found his contact. She finally allowed herself to do what she had been putting off. She chose to unblock him. Val then raised the phone to eye level and pressed the call button. All right, and reading. Woo. All right, wow, it's been a while since I've looked at that. Vaughn, thank you for bringing this up for another reading. That was actually really, really cool being able to hear that and being able to read it out loud with that section of the story. I feel like we really got a section of both Dee's, the dad, and then Val's characters as they're in 2 different sections, right? So we have Dee in the car breaking down, which the office, as he's basically going, his car breaks down, and clearly he's determined to get to his daughter Valerie at all costs, right? But what's not touched upon in this piece is what the reasons why it's so important and literally what he's about to do next. But what we do know is with the car broken down, he's prepared to trek through a snowstorm, which sounds like it's a really bad snowstorm. And then we have Val, who's dealing with the reality of being in a hospital at this time in the pandemic, which clearly that is its own world, right? And as we know from that time period, hospitals are understaffed, under-resourced, and the intensity and turmoil of dealing with death like that in a hospital environment is crazy, right? So we see this moment where Val has this like this moment where she's just finally letting it all out of what she's been dealing with, and then finally decides to open his letter, and we get a little a moment where she decides to finally give him a call. So definitely really powerful. I think overall, like now that I'm like reading it back after it's been a while, I would say like that it was a really interesting section. I would say if I was to go back through this again, I would probably give it another edit. I feel like some of the word choice could definitely be, some of the sentences and paragraphs could definitely be cut down a little bit. There's moments where it feels a little wordy, but it's not horrible. I think I would definitely take it through another round of editing personally. But overall, I mean, the story is very straightforward. And since it's this project that we worked on, I didn't want to put too much critique and analysis into it, since I've already given you a good deal of feedback for this. But overall, like really cool story. Really, really great. I'm really glad that you suggested reading this for today's stream. I, once again, love Dee's character. I love Dee and I love Val, and they're both two very different, contrasting characters, right? You have this dad who has this moment with quoting Schwarzenegger, where he's basically going to trek through a snowstorm. Clearly, there's something about him where he's very like macho. And then we have a Val who clearly is a nurse and is viewed as someone who's a very like role model, but clearly is having a moment of crisis if she's also having a breakdown. So very, very powerful, very good section. Thanks for sharing, my man. Very much appreciated. And let's say, I know you said you listened to it with your mom. I'm glad I hope you guys enjoyed the reading. So awesome. But yeah, wow, I was like, that was I feel so emotionally like drained from today's readings. Not like in a bad way, and just like a good way of that we've done. I've done some characters that have been some really, really solid story arcs, some really solid character arcs. So with where we're at now, I think that's what I got for my voice. I don't think I'm going to be able to do more readings today. I know there's a couple others of you who had sent over stories. If I didn't get to your story today, or it's still in the queue from previous, it'll get added to next week's stream. So I'll touch upon it next week. Whether you're here in the horizontal streaming or whether you're in one of our vertical live streaming formats. Thank you. Glad to have more audiences here. I think this makes us officially streaming to 4, 5 to 6 platforms officially, since we're streaming to YouTube twice. So awesome. Really, really great. Really good storytelling. Now, what we're going to do next, I'm going to hop into my daily writing sprint. Only 20 minutes. It's going to be super straightforward, nothing difficult. Now, if you're feeling super creative, feel free to join along for this writing sprint, right? If you want to sit along and write with me, it's only going to be 20 minutes. I'm going to throw on my new fantasy playlist, which has been super cool. But let's say you're like, hey, I don't feel like writing right now. You can kick back, relax, and I will write vicariously for the both of us. Because I'm at an intense scene with Last Scarecrow, so I promise it to be entertaining, to say the least. Awesome. And then let me... all right. Now with... Actually, I think I can do this. So I'm going to change the vertical. I think I can do the vertical adjustment. So you can see the live stream, and I'll adjust it here as well so I can pull up both fronts. Perfect. And we're going to do like that. And then once we get to the end of this section, I'll touch back upon our quote of the day game. So make sure that if you've been dropping comments, I've been saving the comments throughout, I will touch upon the winner and the top quotes after the sprint. So let's get into it. 20-minute writing sprint. Awesome. And let's throw on our music. All right. And then I need to get my last scarecrow pulled up. So I have it here. Perfect. And this is the section we're at with last scarecrow. And let's get our 20-minute timer. Beautiful. And then we just need to pull up last scarecrow and we are good. Awesome. Perfect. And then you can see here as well over in the vertical, I'm going to throw up music on both of them so that way you can just chill with if you want to get some writing done with me. So let's see, vertical, perfect. So you can see that. I was like, make sure that. Perfect. Awesome. So I got both of those set up. I was like, oh, clearly I got a lot of Grammarly things going on over here. All right, and I am all set up on my end. Here we go. Y'all know, like, it's time to get our writing done. So I got 40 minutes on the clock. And let me throw up music over here. All right, so I got 20 minutes on the clock, and it's time to write now. All right, writing sprint end. All right, what a nice little writing sprint. Wonderful. Woo! All right, and let's fix this guy. Perfect. Writing sprint end. Awesome. And then let's go back. So I felt really good with that section. I feel like I was definitely able to, there we go. I feel like I was definitely able to get some really good writing in for that section for what I was working on. Awesome. Perfect. There we go. Awesome. So as y'all know, sorry, gotta plug these in real fast. Perfect. There we go. Perfect. So I felt really good about that writing sprint. I felt like I was definitely able to get some really good work done on my section with gore. Clearly, I have all three of our characters. So we have a really good moment with Scarecrow as he's chasing, as he's entering into this realm. And he basically sees like these 6 like distinct islands covered in different colored auras. And he's basically beckoned by a voice to come find him. Or his friends are going to die. And then we now have Gore, who's woken up in the middle of this, one of the braziers. And he's being taunted by Skunk, who Skunk then becomes the otter, who is basically the one who just killed his friend, the snake, in one of the previous sections. So we have this chase scene, and I thought it would be really interesting. This is the first time that Gore has had his own point of view chapter. And not only that, he's definitely, it's made worse by the fact that he's basically like, his vision is blurry. He can't really see what he's doing. So as a bear character who has to rely on his instincts to survive, he's basically being pushed to rely on his non-physical senses, or his non-visionary senses. And clearly he's being taunted by the otter, who's stolen his maps. Now the maps is the single key defining thing that he has always cared about since the introduction of his character. And now we're going to be able to dig a little deeper, and we're going to see why as this chase, this pursuit continues. Whew, so exciting. All right, so I felt great about that section. I hope you were able to get some good writing in yourself. Nice, easy little writing sprint. So super exciting. All right, and now with that out of the way, it is time for the quote of the day. So let's see what quotes really stood out. All right, so let's see what quotes stood out. So I saved a number of your comments throughout, and I'll pull up some comments that stood out to me. Okay, so let's see what we got. Marta, you would have loved this one. John, Polish popcorn, the best popcorn. All right, so let's see just a couple. We'll touch on a couple comments that really stood out to me, and then I'll highlight the winner for today's stream. Let's see. Let's see. John, you had another good comment. Plus, if only I tell you what I feel is good about the story, then I am coddling you. Also, it is helpful for people to develop thick skins about feedback. I think that was very good and very intentional about being aware of feedback. And I think that's very, very important. Let's see. And then what else do we have? So we have, I of course have to, John, your pride and your frog. Pride frog forever. I like, that one worked for me. Let's see, Glitchem, you had a really good quote. Quotes are too quoted. Find something else to quote. We're being a little comical over here. All right, we got Glitchem with a little comedy. And then what else do we got? Then we also have Lewis. You had a really good one. Mine is care, connect, create. I absolutely love that. That was absolutely another great quote. Let's see, what other ones do we have? Lewis, another great one. The ghostwriter, haunted by his own words. This feels like the start for like another story over here. Oh man, I think that's great. Doreen, I also loved your quote. Charitable, clear, and creative. That was another really, really good one. And then Atomic, you had an absolutely great quote here. Sizzling, succulent, spicy scent. Tasty alliteration. I think that is a really great comment. It's a great call out to something that worked. Let's see, and then what else? As I'm developing this game, I always like to go back through and make sure there's not any like really big ones that I missed. Let's see. All right, so I think those were the majority of the quotes that really stood out to me. Yeah, okay, so I think those were some of the quotes that really stood out. I was seeing if I wanted to make sure I didn't have any other ones. Yeah, so I think those were the ones that stood out. I also Atomic and Vaughn, thanks for both shouting out the stream and helping viewers if they wanted to submit stories. That was really awesome. Really appreciate that. That's a really good shout out. So I wanted to call that out. And now with our quotes, let's drum roll. And which one is going to be the winner? And let's go. Oof. There's some really interesting quotes today. I'm like, which one do I like the most? All right, so I'm going to declare two winners today because I think these are both completely different styles, and I think both of them definitely stand out to me. So last week I did something that was clever. This week, oh man, there's some really good ones. Okay, this week my top three, and I'll give a top three, the two, and then the one. So my top three, number three is going to be Lewis, the ghostwriter haunted by his own words. You're going to come in third this week. That I like. There's something so clever about that quote that feels like that's like the start of like a story. And like it speaks to like a ghostwriter. Like I absolutely love that. So that's number one for me, or that's going to be number third place. Number two will be. Will it be? I'm kind of going back and forth on which one I like the most. I am going to go with. Ooh, this is a hard one. Oh, this is so hard. Have to make a decision on the spot. Okay. So let's go. All right, we're going to go John, the winner for the second one. This will be the second place. And this was an emoji. Emojis will win with me if they're done correctly. Pride, frog, forever. Absolutely. Let's have a quote up there for pride. 100%, John. Absolutely love that. Pride Frog Forever is number 2. And my quote of the day is going to be, now we're actually over in the vertical stream, is going to be Atomic's sizzling, succulent, spicy scent. Tasty alliteration. I think that is an absolutely amazing way to comment on something that works and then adding a flair to it. And I think that's a really good call out. I absolutely love that. I'm going to drop that into the comments. Winner is Atomic sizzling, succulent, spicy scent. Tasty alliteration. I threw that in the comments. So Atomic's comment was over on the vertical live stream today, but that is going to be my winner of the day. Really great quote, Atomic. Really, really great quote. Really loved what the rest of you guys had going on. Let's see. And then once again, my top 3 is Lewis. You got number 3, the Ghost Rider haunted by his own words. John, number 2, Pride Frog Forever. And then Atomic, number 1, sizzling, succulent, spicy scent. Tasty alliteration. All right, so I absolutely love that. I'm going back and forth on whether I want to just do like a top 1 every time, or if I'm going to do a top couple of them. But like, there were some really good ones, but they were all different styles, right? So then I'm like, it comes down to me. I'm like, okay, do I pick clever? Do I pick like analytical? Do I pick storytelling? I think there's so many different ways. I think that even if we're in the comment section, we're still practicing our writing. Like it's just a different type of writing. And I think that is to be commended. And that's what I want to highlight. So thank you all for participating. That was an absolutely great series of quotes. Absolutely. As I come back down here, you're like, maybe it's a win-win, Lewis. Lewis, it's a win by default. That's a quote from my story. You know what? It's maybe it's a win by default, Lewis. I think that would be the closest. But I absolutely loved it. And I think it just goes to show, right? Even if we're doing like story readings here, it's how do we take things that are in the reading, and then how do we add either our flair, or how do we add something that makes it stand out or elevate? And I think even though it was short, Atomic's sizzling, succulent, spicy scent, tasty alliteration. I think it's just a very direct call out, and I think it worked. So awesome. Lewis, you always win. You'll be our forever winner, Lewis. So once I have finished developing the community tool, it's coming. I don't have a date yet because I need to make sure everything's locked in before I announce any details, but it is coming. So we started last week with our first quote. Lewis, I know you won first. This week I'll mark the 3 winners. I'm still thinking through like what will be like the coolest. But I mean, this week I think I announced there's about like 10 to 15 quotes that I saved. So I always want to make sure that I'm able to actually see and capture all the quotes. And then also by including the vertical format this time has been a learning experience for me as well. So awesome. Thank you all for participating. That was great. That was awesome. And now as we look towards creative writing on the morrow. So what do I got tomorrow? So make sure that you come back tomorrow, because the Creative Right Now podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer, author Holly Davis. And we're going to be sitting down and talking about how do you write characters with disabilities and LGBT themes. This is a perfect topic as we're in the middle of Pride Month. This is a perfect topic if you have characters in your story that are struggling, not that are struggling, but that have disabilities. How do we write believable characters with real disabilities? So we're going to be digging that into tomorrow, 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. So make sure you stay tuned and you come join us for tomorrow. Did you enjoy the stream today? You can actually go check out the Reading Sprints for Storytellers in the playlist, the YouTube description down below. If you're on one of the other platforms, you can come over to YouTube at Kaufman's Corner and come check it out. So it'll be more story and critique show episodes from previous weekends. We've had some really great episodes previously, really great stories, really great writers. And for some of the stories we saw today, you'll see some of the earliest, either earlier versions or earlier sections of the story. So definitely make sure you check it out and you stay tuned. And most importantly, don't forget to like the stream on your way out. Let me know that you got value from this stream. Help me show the algorithms that writing streams are cool. Writing streams are fun, and it's cool to bring in other writers and to put ourselves out there because it takes a lot of confidence to write stuff and then put it out to the world. And I want to absolutely commend each of you who've submitted your stories either today or previously, because it's an awesome experience. And I really hope that your stories will get to that point where they'll be published. You'll be so proud of what you have accomplished, because that's the name of the game, my friends. And that, my friends, is all that I got for you today. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Take care, writer friends, and thank you for joining me in the Vertical live stream. I hope this has been an engaging experience for you, and I appreciate your time. I'll catch you guys tomorrow until we come back to our Vertical.